Chapter 11-12. Yiguchen's words were like a stone that stirred up 1,000 ripples. Skyless Sword Realm, what kind of place was that? Although it was one of the 4 great mystic realms of the Sword Dao Alliance along with Mount Saint Crossing, the Sword Tomb, and the Ancient Sword Tomb. But the degree of danger was far from what the other 3 mystic realms could compare to. Even a pseudo-saint expert like the proud divine continent was trapped inside. It could be seen how dangerous the Skyless Sword Realm was. Among the 4 great mystic realms, the Skyless Sword Realm was definitely the one with the fewest people entering, and also the most frightening mystic realm. I didn't hear wrongly, right? Dugawubai actually wants to explore the Skyless Sword Realm? Is this possible? Even in his peak state, exploring the Skyless Sword Realm is extremely dangerous, not to mention now that his divine abode is crippled. Hearing Yiguchen's words, the entire audience was in an uproar. Although everyone did not quite dare to believe it. But since Yiguchen announced it in public on such an occasion, it naturally could not be false. If it was a lie, there was no need for him to shoot himself in the foot. Master? Mu Xingzu's bright eyes revealed a worried look. She also knew how dangerous the Skyless Sword Realm was. Jian Jinghong sighed deeply. In fact, he was the same as Yiguchen entering the Skyless Sword Realm. After all, the 2 of them were both 9th-generation sword sect cultivators. Oh, really want to enter the Skyless Sword Realm to explore? Meng Charan's eyes revealed a doubtful look. She really did not believe that Yiguchen had the guts to enter the Skyless Sword Realm. Oh, is he courting death? Meng Zhen shook his head and sneered. Yiguchen gave him face in public, so he naturally would not give Yiguchen any face. On the contrary, Yi Tianqing glanced at Yiguchen, and the corners of his mouth revealed a hint of a smile. He naturally understood the purpose of Yiguchen saying this at this time. It was to quell everyone's criticism of him. Yiguchen himself did not care about criticism, but he could not put Yi Tianqing in a difficult position. As expected, when Yiguchen mentioned that he was going to enter the Heavenless Sword Realm, those prodigies who were unhappy with Yiguchen's identity as Jiankui suppressed their dissatisfaction. At the very least, they admired Yiguchen's courage. Since that's the case, I will personally lead Jiankui and Jian Er into the Skyless Sword Realm in a month's time, Heavenly Sentiment said. Jiankui and Jian Er were naturally referring to Yiguchen and Jian Jinghong. Even Heaven Sentiment had spoken. This time, it was definitely true. Even Meng Charan couldn't question him anymore. However, she muttered, if Duguobai falls in the Skyless Sword Realm, then the position of Jiankui will still belong to brother Luoyu. The Sword Sun conferring ceremony came to an end under such circumstances. No one would have thought that a conferring ceremony would cause such a huge uproar. Meng Zhen and the other 3 pseudo-saints withdrew from the Sword Dao Alliance. This was definitely a major event that would spread throughout the Sword Dynasty. Yiguchen and Jian Jinghong's exploration of the Skyless Sword Realm would also cause a huge discussion. After the conferring ceremony, Heaven Sentiment called out to Yiguchen. Senior Heaven Sentiment, is there anything else? Yiguchen asked. Actually, there's another piece of news that I didn't announce in public because I was afraid of causing panic, Heaven Sentiment said. Is it about the 5 aristocratic families? Yiguchen asked. Indeed, there are spies who have investigated the movements of the 5 aristocratic families. They seem to be in contact with the War God Dynasty, Molo Dynasty, and Tyrannical Saber Dynasty, Heaven Sentiment said. Could it be that they want to unite some experts from the 3 dynasties and invade the Sword Dynasty together? Yiguchen also frowned deeply. That should be it. I still underestimated their madness. Heaven Sentiment sighed deeply, and a trace of exhaustion appeared in her eyes as she said, I'm only telling you so that you can be mentally prepared. Yiguchen pondered for a moment and then said, Senior Heaven Sentiment, don't worry. I will do my best to find traces of Alliance Master Proud Divine Continent in the Skyless Sword Realm. I won't force you. Your life is more important, Heaven Sentiment said. She did not pressure Yiguchen. However, Yiguchen himself had made up his mind that he would not easily give up on finding traces of Proud Divine Continent. After that, Yiguchen did not return to Sacred Cliff College. Instead, he stayed in Sword Emperor City and began to adjust his breathing and meditate, preparing for the trip to the skyless Sword Realm in a month. Unsurprisingly, the news of the Sword Sun conferring ceremony had spread throughout the Sword Dynasty. Most people were somewhat dissatisfied with Heaven Sentiment's actions. In their view, at such a critical juncture in the Sword Dynasty, the importance of Meng Zhen and the other three false saints was far greater than that of Yi Guqin. I really don't know why Deputy Alliance Master Heaven Sentiment suddenly became so muddle-headed. Yeah, she can't tell the priorities. Letting Dugubai be Jiankui not only angered Meng Zhen and the others, but also made our Sword Dynasty unable to raise our heads in the battlefield of Heaven's Prides. That's right. When the time comes to participate in the battlefield of Heaven's Prides, the entire South Horizon region will know that our Sword Dynasty's leader, Jiankui, is a cripple with a broken divine palace. Such opinions and discussions were heard everywhere in the Sword Dynasty. The human heart was like this. When Yi Guqin was glorious, everyone's face was full of awe. But when Yi Guqin's halo was gone, that awe immediately turned into disdain. Only a small number of people believed that Yi Guqin had the ability to return to the peak. Yi Guqin also did not go out. He had been in seclusion, waiting for the arrival of the Skyless Sword Realm in a month. The Skyless Sword Realm was perhaps the greatest opportunity for Yi Guqin's divine palace to transform. The Maluo dynasty, as the third dynasty of the 100 Great Dynasties, was also quite famous in the South Horizon region. This was a country of death without mercy and mercy, a dynasty of killing. There was no morality or law to speak of. The strong could enjoy everything. The weak even found it difficult to survive. Therefore, the warriors of the Maluo dynasty were mostly cold-blooded and bloodthirsty. And the blood-ranking Heaven's Prides of the Maluo dynasty were not good people either. In the past battlefield of Heaven's Prides, the Maluo dynasty's prides were the most feared by other Heaven's Prides. At the border of the Maluo dynasty, outside a small city, a black-robed figure walked over. The wind blew his long white hair, making him look bleak and cold. On a cold and evil handsome face, the dark golden right eye looked deep and mysterious. This figure was Yi Guqin's doppelganger, Duguqiuma, who came from the Sword Dynasty to the Maluo dynasty. At this moment, if one probed his aura, one would find that Duguqiuma's cultivation had reached the Divine Soul 9 transformations. In less than 10 days, Duguqiuma's cultivation had jumped 4 major realms, 36 minor realms, from the first level of the body refining realm all the way to the Divine Soul 9 transformations. This speed was simply appalling and terrifying to the extreme. Although the doppelganger's cultivation speed would be affected by the strength of the original body, this speed was indeed abnormally fast. Of course, the one with the greatest impact was the innate purple chi. The innate purple chi was known as a cultivation accelerator, and its effect was not that simple. In addition, Duguqiuma's physique had the ability to devour, so his cultivation speed was naturally very fast. I've finally reached the Maluo dynasty. If I want to break through quickly, I have to kill and devour more flesh and blood essence. Let's start the slaughter in this small city. Duguqiuma's eyes were cold and bloodthirsty. Everyone in the Maluo dynasty was a sinner, so he could kill without restraint. Chapter 11:13. Black Dirt City was an ordinary city at the border of the Mola dynasty. Duguqiuma stepped into the small city and looked around. The streets of the city were bleak and desolate. There were only houses and buildings made of black stones on the sides of the streets. There were barely any shops or storefronts. However, if one thought about it carefully, one would not dare to open a shop in the Mola dynasty without enough background and strength. On both sides of the street, there were cold and obscure gazes staring at Duguqiuma from time to time. Hee, another newcomer? His aura is not bad, but I wonder how strong he is? There are 2 types of people who come to the Mola dynasty. One is the proud sons of the great factions who come to train, and the other is the evil madmen who lick blood on the edge of their blades. That young man should be the former, right? So what if that young man has an extraordinary background? A place like the Mola dynasty doesn't care about one's background. Whispers could be heard from all around the street. Duguqiuma's face was cold. At this moment, the sobbing of a young girl suddenly came from not far ahead of the road. Duguchuma looked over indifferently and saw a young girl in coarse clothes lying on the side of the road crying loudly on the body of a woman. Although the young girl's clothes were coarse, her face was pure and beautiful. At this moment, her eyes were red from crying, and she looked very pitiful. It was obvious that the dead woman was the young girl's mother. There were a few fierce-looking men around the young girl who seemed to want to do something to her. If this scene happened in the Sword Dynasty or any other dynasty, it would definitely attract a group of people to help. However, in the Mola Dynasty, such a thing would not happen at all. The surrounding people all looked at this scene with cold indifference. There was even a hint of amusement in their eyes. However, this amusement did not fall on the young girl, but on Duguchuma. They were very curious if this young man who had just come to the Mola Dynasty was like the other proud sons of heaven who had come to train in the Mola Dynasty, full of righteousness and compassion. Duguchuma walked toward the young girl expressionlessly. He is indeed a hothead. Seeing Dugu walking towards the girl like a demon, the crowd sneered. Young master. The young girl bit her lips as she watched Duguchio-mo walk over. Her eyes were hazy with tears. It was as if a sliver of hope had appeared in the midst of despair. Brat, this is the Molo Dynasty. I advise you to mind your own business. A man revealed a ferocious look as his aura spread out. It was an expert in the 9 transformations of the divine soul. The other men were the same. Young master, please save me. They killed my mother and forced me. The young girl's innocent face was filled with tears. Duguchio-mo walked in front of the girl, and the corners of his mouth slowly curled up. Just when he was less than 3 feet away from the young girl suddenly stopped. A cold and vicious light suddenly flashed through the girl's teary eyes. With a flip of her wrist, she immediately grasped a dagger dipped in poison. With lightning speed, she skillfully stabbed the dagger into Duguchio-mo's left chest. That was the heart of an ordinary person. Traces of tears remained on the girl's face, but her expression was incomparably vicious. Foolish brat, remember in your next life, never come to the Molo Dynasty. The girl's smug expression was cold and sinister. The vicious men around also sneered. Sigh, another unlucky bastard died at the hands of Black Butterfly. TSK, she's Madam Black Scorpion's disciple. Last time, a spirit bridge of heaven and earth prodigy from a top dynasty had his heart pierced by Black Butterfly and died with hatred. Seeing this scene, the crowd whispered to each other. However, they didn't feel anything. After all, death was normal in the Molo Dynasty. However, in the next moment, including those who were watching the show and Black Butterfly's group, their expressions were all stunned. Duguchio-mo didn't cry out in pain, nor did he have any reaction. He just looked at Black Butterfly indifferently, and his body didn't even move. Black Butterfly's beautiful eyes were filled with disbelief as she looked at Duguchio-mo's left chest. Her dagger stabbed into Duguchio-mo's body, but not a drop of blood flowed out. Only wisps of black demonic energy leaked out. How is this possible? This dagger is coated with bone-corroding poison. Black Butterfly was a little incoherent. Previously, she had used this method to plot against many prodigies who came to the Molo Dynasty to train. It was the same every time. In just a few breaths, those prodigies would fall to the ground and die in endless pain. However, Duguchio-mo didn't seem to feel pain. Nor did he show any signs of being poisoned. This was actually all thanks to Duguchio-mo's special constitution. The pure demonic body coupled with the battle god demonic body allowed him to block out pain and be immune to most poisons. Do you take me for a fool? Duguchio-mo's tone was extremely cold. For a girl like her to be able to survive in such a cruel environment for so long was very abnormal. You saw through it long ago? Black Butterfly's voice trembled. What do you think? Duguchio-mo's lips curled into a smile. However, that smile was very cold. Then why don't you dodge? Looking at the evil young man in front of her who couldn't be stabbed or poisoned to death, Black Butterfly felt a sense of fear in her heart. Is it necessary? As soon as Duguchio-mo's voice fell, he directly grabbed Black Butterfly's face with one hand. He didn't dodge, not because he couldn't, but because there was no need to. Black Butterfly's entire face was almost grasped in Duguchiomo's hand. Duguchiomo raised his arm, and Black Butterfly's petite body was suspended in the air. Spare me, I'm the disciple of Madame Black Scorpion. Black Butterfly's entire face was covered by Duguchiomo's palm, so she could only mutter. Madame Black Scorpion was not only a heaven and earth spirit bridge expert, but also ranked in the blood ranking. Duguchiomo didn't speak, and his palm exerted force. Black Butterfly's head exploded, and her pure and beautiful face was torn apart in an instant, with brain matter splattering everywhere. Duguchiomo's expression didn't change at all after he crushed a young girl to death. On the surface of his body, black demonic runes vaguely appeared. Duguchiomo absorbed wisps of blood chi, and his aura became stronger. The wound on his left chest was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Damn it! The surrounding ferocious men were furious, and surrounded Duguchiomo. Duguchiomo's face was cold, and the dark golden soul-devouring demon eye stared at one of the men. That man's body suddenly stopped, and then there was a loud bang. His head exploded like a watermelon. Then, every time Duguchiomo looked at someone, that person's head would explode. The scene was shocking and horrifying. Everyone in the surrounding area was dumbfounded, their bodies trembling. What kind of terrifying ability was this? Whoever he stared at would die. Even these villains who were used to killing and death couldn't help but tremble in their hearts at this moment, as if they had seen the Grim Reaper. In fact, this was one of the abilities of the soul-devouring demon eye that Duguchiomo had discovered. With the power of the soul-devouring demon eye, it caused the soul power in the enemy's brain to explode, causing their head to explode. Of course, this ability was only effective against people whose cultivation was low, or people whose souls were weak. If they were at the same cultivation level, or if they had a spiritual object protecting their sea of consciousness, then this move would be very difficult to use. Of course, as Duguchiomo's cultivation increased, this ability of the soul-devouring demon eye would also increase. After all, it was the talent of the soul-devouring royal family. How could it be so simple? In a short moment, Duguchiomo was surrounded by a circle of corpses. And he didn't even move much. At this moment, a charming voice suddenly sounded. "You dare to kill my disciple, little brother? You're very brave." Chapter 11:14. A beautiful woman in a black robe appeared along with the coquettish voice. She was wearing a tight black robe that wrapped around her voluptuous and mature body. Her face was enchanting and her lips were purple. She looked extremely seductive. Madame Black Scorpion was ranked 98th on the blood ranking of the Molo dynasty. Although it was a low ranking, Madame Black Scorpion was extremely infamous at the borders of the dynasty. Many geniuses from other dynasties who came to the Molo dynasty to train were killed by her. At this moment, looking at the corpses on the ground, Madame Black Scorpion became vigilant. She couldn't see through Duguchiomo's cultivation, but her initial judgment was that it shouldn't be higher than hers. That was why Madame Black Scorpion dared to appear. As Madame Black Scorpion appeared, some of the surrounding people secretly swallowed their saliva. Just like her name, Madame Black Scorpion was a femme fatale. There were even rumors that she had learned the Six Desire Demon Sect's sexual absorption technique. Those men who were captured by her would eventually be sucked dry and die a miserable death. The Six Desire Demon Sect was the sect that Pink Playboy belonged to. Of course, Madame Black Scorpion and Pink Playboy couldn't be compared. The gap between them on the blood ranking was too big. TSK, even Madame Black Scorpion has appeared. This kid is going to be unlucky. Yeah, Madame Black Scorpion is on the blood ranking. Although she's only ranked 98th, this kid can't handle her. When the surrounding people saw this scene, they all felt that the outcome was already decided. Duguchiomo looked at Madame Black Scorpion without any change in his expression. Looking at Duguchiomo's handsome and charming face, Madame Black Scorpion smiled charmingly and said, "Fine, I'll treat you well after I catch you." Madame Black Scorpion stuck out her tongue and licked her lips, revealing a cold and vicious expression. She twisted her slender waist and flashed toward Duguchiomo. Duguchuma focused his right eye and activated the soul-devouring demon eye ability. Immediately, Madame Black Scorpion felt her sea of consciousness become chaotic and set off waves as if it was about to explode. Ah! Madame Black Scorpion groaned in pain and her face turned pale. She felt as if her head was about to split open. Her aura immediately became unstable and fell by a lot. Duguchuma frowned slightly and said, "Looks like it still won't work." Madame Black Scorpion's head did not explode immediately. The reason was also very simple. Duguchuma's current realm was only at the Divine Soul 9 transformations. It was not enough to cause Madame Black Scorpion's sea of consciousness to explode. However, Duguchuma did not mind. He extended a hand and grasped at the void. Suddenly, billowing demonic chi spread out, and a terrifying fluctuation swept out. Yuan devouring explosion. The move that Duguchuma used was exactly the move that Soul Extinguishing Flame had once used. After refining the Soul Source Crystal of the Soul Extinguishing Flame, he had also inherited all of the Soul Extinguishing Flame's martial arts abilities. Although the devouring energy explosion was not as terrifying as the 7 limits of devouring heaven and destroying earth, it was still a martial art of the soul-devouring clan. How could it be weak? With this move, Madame Black Scorpion was blasted back, coughing up blood from the corner of her mouth. How is this possible? Madame Black Scorpion exclaimed. She could determine that the youth in front of her had absolutely not stepped into the spirit bridge of heaven and earth stage. He hadn't even reached the life and death threshold yet. However, that power caused her to feel incomparably terrified. Duguchuma didn't say anything else and attacked again. Evil Yuan puppet. A series of black shockwaves swept out. Madame Black Scorpion was blasted back again, spitting out blood from her mouth. She was scared out of her wits and turned to leave. "You think you can leave?" A bloodthirsty coldness flashed in Duguchuma's eyes. As a spirit bridge of heaven and earth expert, Madame Black Scorpion's essence chi could be considered vigorous. After killing her, Duguchuma should be able to break through to the life and death threshold. Dark Scorpion Venom Palm. Madame Black Scorpion gathered the genuine chi in her body and blasted out a palm strike. As the green poisonous gas churned, it condensed into a square palm print and blasted toward Duguchuma. Duguchuma clenched his 5 fingers into a fist, and black demonic patterns appeared on the surface of his body. Battle God demonic body was displayed. A powerful force burst out from his body. Although the current Battle God demonic body was only at the first revolution and its power was temporarily inferior to Yiguchen's ancient god body, it was still considered top-notch compared to other body refining techniques. A punch blasted out, accompanied by an ear-piercing sonic boom, directly punching through the green palm print. "Ha, you're indeed a rash boy." Madame Black Scorpion was delighted to see Duguchuma destroy the palm print with one punch, and a bitter sneer appeared on her face. The most powerful part of her move wasn't the power of the palm print itself, but the scorpion venom it carried. If infected with the scorpion venom, let alone a spirit bridge expert, even the heaven prides of the divine dwelling stage would be in danger. This was one of the reasons why Madame Black Scorpion was infamous. However, the next scene made the bitter sneer on Madame Black Scorpion's face abruptly freeze. Duguchuma, who was infected with the scorpion venom, didn't seem to be affected in the slightest. He didn't even frown. "How is it possible that you're immune to such a strong poison?" Madame Black Scorpion shook her head in disbelief. Her strongest means was poison, and Duguchuma's pure demon body was the least afraid of poison. The next moment, Duguchuma stomped his foot, and his figure flashed in front of Madame Black Scorpion. He grabbed her neck with one hand. Madame Black Scorpion's face immediately flushed red, and her voluptuous body twisted like a worm. She was almost suffocating. The faces of everyone present froze at the same time. Madame Black Scorpion, who was ranked 98th on the blood ranking list, wasn't even a match for Duguchuma. How is it possible? Who is this young man? Madame Black Scorpion couldn't even last 3 moves in his hands? It's too terrifying. This young man's heart is terrifyingly cruel, and his means are even more strange. Who the hell is he? The faces of the surrounding martial artists were filled with fear. The Mo Luo Empire was such a place. The weak would be mercilessly tortured and killed, and the strong would make everyone bow their heads in awe. "Spare my life, I'm willing to do anything for my lord." Madame Black Scorpion struggled, trying to show a charming smile on her face. Duguqiuma glanced at Madame Black Scorpion's voluptuous body with a wicked look in his eyes. Although he had merged with 1/3 of Yi Guqin's Sea of Consciousness origin, his character was unruly like a demon. He wasn't like Yi Guqin, who was indifferent to beauty. "I'll serve my lord well and make you comfortable," Madame Black Scorpion said, twisting her body. "It's a pity that your body is too dirty. In the entire Mo Luo Empire, only Princess Luo Ho can barely arouse my interest." Duguqiuma sneered. Hearing this, the surrounding people's faces turned dull. Princess Luo Ho was ranked second on the blood ranking, the princess of a top empire. Even the geniuses of the 6 major forces in the Mo Luo Empire couldn't reach her. And judging from the young man's tone, Princess Luo Ho could barely arouse his interest. No, spare my life." Madame Black Scorpion looked terrified. The next moment, a cracking sound was heard. Duguqiuma directly crushed Madame Black Scorpion's neck. An expert ranked 98th on the blood ranking list of the Mo Luo Empire had fallen. Chapter 11:15. Looking at Madame Black Scorpion, who was crushed to death, the entire Black Dirt City fell into a dead silence. In this small border city, Madame Black Scorpion was already the strongest person they could meet. However, the strongest person in their eyes was crushed to death by that white-haired youth. This kind of shock was not small. Duguqiuma activated the devouring power of the God Devourer's sword in his body. Madame Black Scorpion's flesh, blood, essence, and spiritual energy were all refined and absorbed by Duguqiuma. His aura also rose again, but it was still stuck at a bottleneck. Duguqiuma searched Madame Black Scorpion's origin ring again. Most of them were useless to him. Only a blood potion caught his attention. Duguqiuma opened the blood bottle. Inside was half a bottle of bright red liquid that was as hot as fire. What a rich blood energy! Duguqiuma's eyes flashed. He drank a mouthful and immediately felt as if magma had entered his throat. Rich essence gushed out of his body, accompanied by a fiery tempering power. Duguqiuma's bottleneck began to loosen. This made Duguqiuma slightly surprised. With a flash, he directly grabbed a person on the street and asked, "What is this thing?" The man said tremblingly, This is Azura blood." Then, Duguqiuma understood. In the Mola dynasty, the most popular currency was not sky crystals, but Azura blood. Azura blood not only contained rich blood energy, but also was very helpful for cultivation. It also contained a special tempering effect. As such, the Azura's blood was extremely helpful to Duguqiuma's cultivation. Of course, Azura blood was also an absolutely precious resource. Even Madame Black Scorpion only had half a bottle. Where does Azura blood come from? Duguqiuma asked coldly. There must be a place where such a special resource came from. In the Mola dynasty, there is a secret realm called Azura Bloody Road. All Azura blood is produced from the blood pool in Azura Bloody Road, the man said nervously. Azura blood path. Duguqiuma's eyes narrowed slightly. If he wanted to break through the boundary even faster, Dugu needed to obtain even more Azura blood. Then he looked at the man. With a puff, the man's head exploded, and red and white matter splattered everywhere. Almost everyone in the Moro dynasty was tainted by evil. Even these people had watched coldly from the sidelines when Dugu had been plotted against by the Black Butterfly. Duguqiuma didn't have any misgivings towards these people. But devil, this guy is a peerless devil. The surrounding crowd scattered like birds and beasts. But if Duguqiuma wanted to kill someone, who could escape? Killing one is a sin, but killing 10,000 is a hero. The truth, good and evil in this world have always been determined by the strong, so I will use your blood to pave the way for me, to seek the devil's Tao. Duguqiuma raised his hand, and a ferocious devil sword covered in black crystals appeared in his hand. It was the god devourer wrapped in black crystals. As Duguchiomo's sword vibrated, streaks of black sword chi shot out in all directions. The slaughter didn't stop. 10,000 souls wailed. Not long after, Black Dirt City was set ablaze with smoke and fire. Duguchiomo wore a black robe and held the god devourer in his hand. His white hair fluttered in the wind. Against the backdrop of the ruins of blood and fire, Duguchiomo woke up like a demon king, and Azura came out of seclusion. His killing intent was so dense that it made one shudder. After drinking half a bottle of Azura blood and absorbing the flesh and blood essence of everyone in the city, his cultivation had broken through to the threshold of life and death. Next city, continue, Duguchiomo's slightly hoarse voice sounded like the whisper of the Grim Reaper. In the following month, Duguchiomo passed through 12 more cities. Duguchiomo massacred every city, and the sky was filled with raging flames. In 1 month, 13 cities were massacred. Even in the Mola dynasty, where massacres were common, it was still extremely shocking. In a short time, the rumors of the white-haired sword demon had spread through almost half of the Mola dynasty. In the rumors, the young man had snow-white hair, a dark gold right eye, and a black crystal sword in his hand. He had massacred 13 cities without a single drop of blood on him. Wherever his gaze passed, the heads of those with lower cultivation bases would explode. Even those with higher cultivation bases would have a splitting headache, and their combat power would be greatly reduced. Moreover, Duguchiomo's battle record was not limited to massacring 13 cities. More than 10 prodigies on the blood ranking had died at the hands of Duguchiomo. Among them, the highest ranking had reached more than 40. One could imagine how great of an impact Duguchiomo had had in the Mola dynasty. In a palace of the Mola dynasty, Princess Luoho heard the news and muttered to herself, "The white-haired sword demon massacred 13 cities. Who is he?" Princess Luoho was puzzled. Although she was also ruthless and bloodthirsty, the white-haired sword demon was definitely more ruthless than her. Princess Luoho could not help but think of the lonesome star and the demon emperor's vision. Could the vision be related to the white-haired sword demon? But no matter what, Princess Luoho would never have guessed. The white-haired sword demon was Yi Guchen's clone, who had a conflict with her in the sacred dynasty's treasure. Duguchiomo's path of killing had not stopped. After killing more than 10 prodigies on the blood ranking, Duguchiomo had also obtained some Azura blood. In addition, he had refined the flesh and blood essence from massacring 13 cities. Duguchiomo's realm had risen to the 5th level of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. In a month, he had risen from the body refining realm to the 5th level of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. This was absolutely shocking news. On this day, Duguchiomo was approaching the 14th city. However, before he entered the city, a figure suddenly appeared. It was a woman in green. Her face was delicate, and her lips were painted with rouge. She did not have the slightest murderous aura and bloodthirsty aura that people of the Molo dynasty usually had. But in the face of such a woman, Duguchiomo's face did not change in the slightest. In the Molo dynasty, women, especially beautiful women, were often more dangerous than fierce men. Black Butterfly and Madame Black Scorpion were examples. Moreover, Duguchiomo could also sense the woman's cultivation. Divine Dwelling Stage. This was the first time Duguchiomo had encountered a Divine Dwelling Stage heaven pride in the Molo dynasty. I presume this gentleman is the white-haired sword demon that has been the talk of the town in the Molo dynasty recently? The woman in green looked at Duguchiomo, seemingly without hostility. Duguchiomo did not say anything and activated the power of the spirit-devouring demon eye. Suddenly, the woman in green's face turned pale, and her delicate body trembled slightly. Her beautiful eyes revealed a slight tremor as she looked at Duguchiomo. Rumors were rumors, and they would never be as profound as personal experience. The woman in green finally understood that Duguchiomo's terrifying eye technique, which could kill anyone he stared at, was not groundless. Oh, the spiritual object guarding the sea of knowledge? Duguchiomo tilted his head slightly, looking at the woman in green. Chapter 11:16. The woman in front of him was able to resist the power of his soul-devouring demon eye. To a large extent, it was because she had a spiritual object protecting her sea of consciousness. Just like the meteorite demonic butterfly in Yi Guchen's sea of consciousness. "Stop, I don't mean to be your enemy," the woman in green hurriedly said. Originally, she had only come here to investigate Dugu Chiuma's situation. Now, she didn't even need to test him. The woman in green knew that the white-haired youth in front of her was definitely a terrifying prodigy. On the surface, he seemed to be only at the 5th level of the heaven and earth spirit bridge. However, the faint dangerous aura he emitted made her, a prodigy of the divine dwelling realm, feel apprehensive. Dugu Chiuma temporarily stopped and looked at the woman in green indifferently. "I am the saintess of the sky demon sect, Qing Qing," said the woman named Qing Qing. "The sky demon sect." Dugu Chiuma murmured. The Maluo dynasty was not like the Sword dynasty, which had major families and academies. Other than the strongest Maluo dynasty's royal family, there were 6 major forces. The Mystic Demon Palace, the Demonic Beast Sect, the Black Voodoo Cult, the 6 Desire Demon Sect, the Blood Cloth Tower, and the Sky Demon Sect. These 6 forces were all powerful forces with false saints overseeing them. Among them, Chao Hu of the Demonic Beast Sect and Pink Playboy of the 6 Desire Demon Sect had died at the hands of Yi Guchen. The godson of the Black Voodoo Cult had also appeared in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure. Dugu Chiuma looked at Qing Qing and said coldly, "Tell me your purpose." Dugu Chiuma knew that the saintess of the Sky Demon Sect had not come to him just to test him. Qing Qing was slightly relieved when she heard this. She was really afraid that Dugu Chiuma would attack her. Even if her cultivation level was 1 level higher than Dugu Chiuma, Qing Qing still instinctively felt a sense of danger when facing Dugu Chiuma. "Young master, do you know of the Azura Blood Road?" Qing Qing suddenly asked. Dugu Chiuma's eyes flashed with a strange light. The Azura blood he needed came from the Azura Blood Road. "I'm sure young master needs the Azura's blood. I've heard that after you kill the blood-ranking geniuses, you'll search their origin rings for the Azura's blood," Qing Qing probed. "Get straight to the point," Dugu Chiumo said coldly. Qing Qing waved her hand and took out 10 bottles of Azura blood. "What do you mean?" Dugu Chiumo raised his eyebrows slightly. "Qing Qing represents the Heavenly Demon Sect. I hope that Sir can join the Heavenly Demon Sect and participate in the Azura Blood Path." Qing Qing sincerely said. Dugu Chiumo narrowed his eyes slightly. The dark golden soul-devouring demon stared at Qing Qing, making her feel a little uncomfortable as if she had been exposed. However, her words were indeed sincere and there was no falsehood in them. "Come here," Dugu Chiumo said calmly. Qing Qing's expression changed and she gritted her teeth slightly. She moved lightly and landed in front of Dugu Chiumo. She was confident that no matter how strong Dugu Chiumo was, he could not kill her instantly. However, in the next moment, Qing Qing's delicate body froze. Dugu Chiumo stretched out his hand and pinched her snow-white chin, pulling her in front of him. The corner of his mouth curled into a sinister smile. Looking at the handsome face that was so close to her, Qing Qing's breathing almost stopped. She felt a strong murderous aura emanating from Dugu Chiumo's body. "You want to bribe me with just 10 bottles of Azura's blood? The Heavenly Demon Sect must be dreaming. Do you think I don't know the current situation of the Heavenly Demon Sect?" Dugu Chiumo exposed her. "You know." Qing Qing bit her red lips and her expression changed. The current situation of the Heavenly Demon Sect was indeed worrying. In the entire Molo dynasty, other than the strongest royal family, the strongest among the 6 major forces was the Mystic Demon Palace. The Heavenly Demon Sect was once a branch of the Mystic Demon Palace. Therefore, the Mystic Demon Palace and the Heavenly Demon Sect were like fire and water. However, the Heavenly Demon Sect could not compare to the Mystic Demon Palace in terms of foundation or prodigies. The prodigies ranked 3rd and 4th on the blood ranking were both from the Mystic Demon Palace. Meanwhile, Qing Qing, the saintess of the Heavenly Demon Sect, was only ranked 14th on the blood ranking. She did not even enter the top 10. This showed the gap between the Heavenly Demon Sect and the Mystic Demon Palace. However, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that the Azura Blood Road was about to open again. Every time it opened, the Molo royal family and the 6 major forces would send their prodigies in to train. The ranking of the Molo dynasty's blood ranking relied heavily on the prodigies' performance in the Azura Blood Road. Moreover, not only these prodigies, but the 6 major forces would also produce rankings. The Heavenly Demon sect had been at the bottom for 4 consecutive years. If the prodigies of the Heavenly Demon sect could not obtain good results in the Azura Blood Road this time, the Heavenly Demon sect would be at the bottom again. The result of being at the bottom this time was that the Heavenly Demon sect would not be allowed to participate in the Azura Blood Road in the future. If they could not participate in the Azura Blood Road, they would lose a great opportunity to obtain the Azura Blood and other opportunities. This was undoubtedly one disaster after another for the Heavenly Demon sect. Therefore, the Heavenly Demon sect had been wantonly recruiting prodigies recently. However, prodigies were not so easy to find. At this time, the news of the white-haired sword demon had spread like wildfire. Therefore, the Heavenly Demon sect sent Qing Qing to contact Dugu Qiuma in an attempt to rope him in. Dugu Qiuma had already heard the news about the Heavenly Demon sect. He was not a madman who only knew how to kill. His meticulous mind was not inferior to Yi Guchen's at all. Then what do you want? Qing Qing bit her lip and said. Being so close to Dugu Qiuma made her look unnatural. Although she was the saintess of the Heavenly Demon sect, she still maintained her purity. Not all women in the Molo dynasty were as loose as Madame Black Scorpion. What do I want? Dugu Qiuma pinched Qing Qing's face. Her skin was fair and supple, and it felt good to pinch. Qing Qing frowned slightly. This white-haired killing god, he wouldn't have any thoughts about her, right? As if he saw through Qing Qing's thoughts, Dugu Qiuma smiled coldly and said, Don't worry. You are not worthy to be my woman. You can be a maid. Dugu Qiuma sneered. Qing Qing's beautiful eyes flashed with shame and anger. She was the saintess of the Heavenly Demon sect, yet she was looked down upon by someone. 100 bottles of Azura's blood, and I can agree to help the Heavenly Demon sect participate in the Azura blood path. Dugu Qiuma said. Qing Qing sucked in a cold breath. 100 bottles of Azura's blood was definitely asking for an exorbitant price. Even the Heavenly Demon sect would have to think twice. I can take you back to the Heavenly Demon sect and ask the elders for their opinion. These 10 bottles of Azura's blood can be considered a deposit. Qing Qing didn't dare to directly agree. Instead, she handed the 10 bottles of Azura's blood to Dugu Qiuma. She wasn't afraid that Dugu Qiuma would take the Azura's blood and run away. After all, no matter how weak the Heavenly Demon sect was, they still had a false saint expert. Dugu Qiuma accepted the Azura's blood. If he could really obtain 100 bottles of Azura's blood, he was absolutely confident that he could cultivate to the 9th level of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge, and even break through to the Divine Dwelling stage wouldn't be impossible. Qing Qing suddenly thought of something and snorted, Oh right, you said that Qing Qing isn't worthy to be your woman. Then there's another piece of news from the Azura blood path that you might be interested in. What news? Dugu Qiuma asked. I heard that the prodigy who obtains first place in the Azura blood path will have the right to marry Princess Luo Ho and become the prince consort of the Mola dynasty. Qing Qing said, seemingly wanting to suppress Dugu Qiuma's arrogance. She opened her mouth again. Since you said that Qing Qing isn't worthy of you, then Princess Luo Ho is worthy of you, right? Well, barely. Dugu Qiuma nodded. Haha. Qing Qing covered her mouth and laughed. She just wanted to mock Dugu Qiuma's arrogance. She didn't expect Dugu Qiuma to have such thoughts. Sigh, although Dugu Qiuma's strength isn't weak and even I can't see through him, but it would be good if he could enter the top 10 of the blood ranking. As for defeating the first place of the blood ranking and marrying Princess Luo Ho, Qing Qing shook her head. It wasn't that she looked down on Dugu Qiuma. Instead, it was because this was indeed something that was almost impossible. Because the first place of the blood ranking of the Mola dynasty was mysterious and powerful. It was almost on par with Huang Chenqiu, who had concealed his identity in the Sword Dynasty and used the code name Z to dominate the first place of the sword ranking. It could be seen how powerful the first place of the blood ranking was. Almost no prodigy could shake his position. Even Princess Luo Ho, who was the princess of a country, could only be second. Therefore, in Qing Qing's mind, even the white-haired sword demon who had set the record of slaughtering 13 cities was no match for the first place of the blood ranking. Chapter 11:17. Just as Dugu was about to head to the Sky Demon sect with Qing Qing, at the border of the Mola Kingdom, a huge battle was breaking out in the desert. The three silhouettes intertwined. Two of them joined forces to attack another silhouette. Boom! Another collision caused the air to be filled with dust and sand. A woman in a black dress looked across from her in the sandstorm. Her charming face was covered with a black veil and she wore a black dress that wrapped around her tall and curvy body. She exuded a strange charm like an enchantress in the night that bewitched one's mind. It was the demon of the demonic extermination sect, Wan. Opposite her stood a man and a woman. The woman was in her 20s and wore a moon-white dress that accentuated her extraordinary aura. Her hair was like a waterfall that swayed in the wind. She was beautiful and as cold as the moon. There was a mole at the corner of her left eye that was brimming with tears. It made her look cold and beautiful, and it made her look even more lovely. At this moment, she was holding a sword and facing off against Wan. On the other side was a youth wearing a Big Dipper robe and a Mizar star crown. He had a handsome face and his eyes were like the stars in the sky, deep and bright. If Yi Guchen were here, he wouldn't be unfamiliar with this man and woman. They were Gu Xiaoyang and Yi Cangyue. One of them was the prodigy of the Starry Sword Pavilion. The other was the prodigy of the Misty Sword Pavilion. Yi Cangyue, in particular, stared at Wan'er with a cold and beautiful face. The two of them had always been at loggerheads with each other. Wan'er was the demon of the demonic extermination sect and was like a peerless enchantress. Yi Cangyue was known as Fairy Cangyue. She was pure like a flower that could only be admired from afar. One was a demon and the other a fairy. It was as if they were born to be at loggerheads. In reality, that was the case. Although Wan'er looked charming, she had inherited the ruthlessness of the demonic extermination sect. She had started a bloody massacre more than once. On the other hand, Yi Cangyue possessed a noble and pure disposition. Even though she wasn't a saint, she would frequently help others, and that was why she was praised as a fairy. Because of their different standpoints and personalities, Wan'er and Yi Cangyue had fought against each other many times. They could be said to be fated opponents. Big Sister Cangyue, I didn't think you would follow me. But, are you two going to fight together as husband and wife? Wan'er's face was covered by a black veil, revealing only a pair of beautiful eyes. Don't spout nonsense. Do you think I don't know your objective? I'm afraid you want to find the person who caused the Demon King to descend to the 9 heavens. I, Cangyue, will never let a witch like you succeed. Yi Cangyue's voice was like a clear spring with a hint of coldness. One could imagine if Wan'er were to bring the person who had caused the Demon Emperor's phenomenon back to the demonic extermination sect. It probably wouldn't be long before the demonic extermination sect nurtured an unparalleled Demon King prodigy. This was definitely not what Yi Cangyue wanted to see. That's not up to you, sister. How about this? I have a suggestion, Wan'er said with a smile. What is it? Yi Cangyue said coldly. It's very simple. Big sister, let me find the person who caused the Demon Emperor's phenomenon. If he's a handsome young man, I'll introduce him to Big Sister. Let's have a wonderful story of a fairy and a demon king. How about that? Wan'er chuckled. How dare you? Yi Cangyue's fairy face turned cold. Only then did she realize that Wan'er was teasing her. Gu Xiaoyang's face also darkened. He had been pursuing Yi Cangyue and hadn't given up until now. It's okay if Big Sister is reserved. Wan'er will also be with you. Let's have a story of 2 women serving 1 man. How about that? Wan'er laughed and spoke without restraint. Shut up. Yi Cangyue couldn't stand Wan'er's filthy words. She drew her sword and stabbed at Wan. Gu Xiaoyang did the same. Although it was a long road to pursue, Gu Xiaoyang didn't give up. He had already decided that Yi Tsangyue would be his woman. One of them was young Master Xingyun, while the other was an 8th grade prodigy. They were definitely famous in the entire South Horizon region. Even though one, was the most talented witch in the demonic extermination sect, she didn't dare to be careless. 2 all Luo extermination light. 1 activated a supreme martial art. She stretched out her hand and a black light appeared. Wherever it passed, even the air was annihilated. Yi Tsangyue's delicate body shook and a ball of strange brilliance appeared. It was like a full moon that spread out from her body and enveloped her body. The black demonic light fell on the shadow that was like a full moon, but it couldn't break through its defense. The power of the immortal divine fetus. One's eyes turned solemn when she saw that. As an 8th grade prodigy, Yi Tsangyue was born with the immortal divine fetus in her body. It was like a silver full moon and was known to have the power of immortality. It was also the biggest reason why Yi Tsangyue could become one of the top prodigies in the South Horizon region. Gu Xiaoyang's eyes lit up when he saw that. He pursued Yi Tsangyue because he liked her. Secondly, if he could have sex with Yi Tsangyue, he might have a chance to obtain part of the power of the immortal divine fetus. Damn it. If the innate sword embryo hadn't been taken away by Yi Guqin, Yi Tsangyue would have been my woman by now. Gu Xiaoyang was unwilling to accept the fact. The innate sword embryo and the immortal divine fetus could be combined to form the innate indestructible sword embryo. Gu Xiaoyang believed that with Yi Tsangyue's dedication to cultivation, she would eventually want to obtain the innate indestructible sword embryo. Unfortunately, the innate sword embryo had been taken back by Yi Guqin. On the other side, one who didn't hesitate. She used her extreme speed movement skill and flashed into the distance. At the same time, she giggled and said, "Sister Tsangyue, don't worry. One will keep her promise. I'll find the unparalleled Demon King and make him your husband. Don't go." Yi Tsangyue's delicate body shook. The power of the immortal divine fetus spread out and dispersed the black light. One had already slipped away. She had a 50% chance of winning against Yi Tsangyue alone, not to mention that Gu Xiaoyang was glaring at her from the side. Therefore, one had no intention of being entangled with Yi Tsangyue and simply escaped. Damn it. Yi Tsangyue frowned. She calmed herself down and turned to look at Gu Xiaoyang. "Young Master Gu, why did you have to come along?" In the beginning, Yi Tsangyue wanted to track one alone. However, Gu Xiaoyang took the initiative to join in later. Firstly, I'm worried about Fairy Tsangyue's safety. Secondly, I wonder if Fairy Tsangyue knows that there's a mystery realm in the Molo dynasty called the Azura Bloody Road? Gu Xiaoyang smiled mysteriously. "What do you mean?" Yi Tsangyue asked indifferently. Gu Xiaoyang smiled and said, "My Starry Universe Sword Pavilion happened to receive a piece of news. In the deepest part of the Azura Bloody Road, there might be the inheritance of a supreme expert." There's such a thing? Yi Tsangyue was surprised. She only wanted to stop one from searching for the person who had caused the Demon Emperor phenomenon. She did not know about this. If the person who caused the Demon Emperor phenomenon is really in the Molo dynasty, he will most likely participate in the Azura Bloody Road. At that time, as long as we conceal our identities and enter, not only will we be able to capture the person who caused the phenomenon, we might even be able to obtain the inheritance of a supreme expert, Gu Xiaoyang said with a smile. Yi Tsangyue nodded slightly when she heard this. She did not like Gu Xiaoyang's pestering. However, this piece of news from Gu Xiaoyang had indeed provided a lot of help. No matter who you are, Tsangyue will not allow you to cause the Demon Emperor to descend to the 9 heavens. Yi Tsangyue muttered in her heart. Her clear eyes were filled with determination. Chapter 11-18. Sword Dynasty, Sword Imperial City, in a secluded cave. Yi Guqin sat cross-legged on the ground with a grimace mask on his face. After a month of adjustment, his sea of consciousness origin was almost completely restored. Except for the broken divine abode in his body, Yi Guqin was in good condition in all other aspects and reached the best. A month's time is up. I wonder if the skyless sword realm can bring me a surprise? Yi Guchen muttered to himself in his heart. Although Yi Guchen, who cultivated the Nine Tribulations Heart Sutra, had almost no suspense in reconstructing the divine abode. But it was best to reconstruct the divine abode before the prodigy battlefield began. Otherwise, Yi Guchen, whose divine abode was broken, would probably struggle even if he participated in the prodigy battlefield. It was difficult for him to compete with the top prodigies of the South Horizon region with just his physical body. After all, there might be Dragon and Phoenix list prodigies in the prodigy battlefield. That was the list of the younger generation of the entire South Horizon region, including the prodigies of many overlord forces, and the value was very high. It was far from being comparable to the Sword List, Blood List, War God List, and other Dynasty Prodigy lists. Not to mention that there might be 10 great young masters, 1 emperor, 4 emperors, and other monstrous prodigies. Those monstrous prodigies were Yi Guchen's real opponents. Although I'm still not sure whether my divine abode can be reconstructed in the skyless sword realm, at least, my clone improved very quickly. Yi Guchen thought in his heart. 1/3 of his sea of consciousness origin was given to Duguchuma. Between the original body and the clone, the mind was connected. Any thoughts and actions of Duguchuma, Yi Guchen could feel it without even thinking about it. Because to a certain extent, Duguchuma was another him. And Duguchuma's cultivation speed did not disappoint Yi Guchen. In just a month, he cultivated to the 5th level of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge, which could be called abnormal. As for the massacre caused by Duguchuma, Yi Guchen did not mind too much. This was because Yi Guchen himself was no saint. In addition, most of the people in the Moro dynasty were sinners, so Yi Guchen would not stop his doppelganger from becoming stronger through killing. The Azura blood path? That is the greatest opportunity for my avatar to grow. I have to participate. If I can't rebuild my divine dwelling in the skyless sword realm, at least there is still Duguchuma. If he breaks through to the divine dwelling stage, his combat strength will not be weaker than mine, Yi Guchen pondered. He had made all the necessary preparations. At this moment, a respectful voice came from outside the cave. Your Highness Jinkue, Vice Alliance Leader Yi and the others are here. Oh, can we finally go? Yi Guchen stood up and walked out the door. Outside, it was already packed with people. The ones in the lead were naturally Yi Tianqing and the others. Many elders and disciples from Tianxian College and Sacred Cliff College were also present. In addition, Meng Zhen, Meng Churen, Luo Yu and the others were also present. They wanted to see whether Yi Guchen was pretending or not. Elder Yi, let's go. Yi Guchen didn't waste any time and directly said. Action was the best proof. Seeing Yi Guchen agree to go to the skyless sword realm without the slightest hesitation, everyone in the Sword Emperor city revealed looks of admiration. Even those who had criticized Yi Guchen for winning the position of Jinkue sighed inwardly at this moment and temporarily dispelled their prejudice against Yi Guchen. Sigh, if only Jinkue could rebuild his divine dwelling, then no one would question him. A cultivator shook his head and sighed. It's not that simple to rebuild a divine dwelling. Some people also felt that there was no hope. But in any case, Yi Guchen's performance had caused public opinion to change. Meng Zhen's expression didn't look too good. He snorted coldly and said, empty courage, but nothing more than a brute. Can he really bring the leader out? He dares to enter the skyless sword realm without a trace of cultivation. In the end, let alone find the leader, I think he might not even be able to keep his life, Meng Churen said coldly. She naturally didn't believe that Yi Guchen, whose divine dwelling was destroyed, could walk out of the skyless sword realm unscathed. Yi Guchen didn't care about public opinion. Under the lead of Yi Tianqing and the others, they went to the skyless sword realm. A large group of cultivators followed behind them, all wanting to witness it with their own eyes. Meng Zhen, Meng Churen and the others followed closely behind. Without seeing Yi Guchen step into the skyless sword realm with their own eyes, they absolutely wouldn't believe it. The skyless sword realm was the most mysterious and dangerous of the 4 great secret realms of the Sword Dynasty. Its location was not in any of the 360 ridges. Instead, it was located in a barren mountain at the edge of the Sword Dynasty. In just a few days, Yiguchen and the others also arrived at this boundary. As far as the eye could see, the continuous desolate mountain range was uninhabited, and the vegetation was sparse. Yiguchen swept a glance and could vaguely sense an extremely terrifying sword concept brewing in the depths of the barren mountain range. That kind of sword concept even far surpassed the sword concept inside the sword tomb. "Let's go in." Yi Tianqing waved her hand slightly. Everyone entered the barren mountain range together. Although the entire mountain range stretched for thousands of miles, there was not a single monster. It was very strange, as if this was a forbidden land. Before long, everyone entered the deepest part of the mountain range. In front, an incomparably majestic barren mountain appeared. It looked to be at least 10,000 feet high. And at the foot of the barren mountain, a pitch-black cave that looked like the mouth of an ancient giant beast appeared. "That's the entrance to the skyless sword realm," Yi Tianqing said. Yiguchen looked over. His soul's perception was extremely sharp, and he could sense that the sword pressure from before had come from within the cave. The pitch-black cave was like the giant mouth of an ancient fierce beast. It looked a little scary. In addition, there was a rumor that it was difficult to enter the skyless sword realm. Everyone present held their breaths and looked at Yiguchen. Under the ghost mask, Yiguchen's lips curled into a faint smile. As long as it was a secret realm related to swords, Yiguchen would not have any fear. Yiguchen did not hesitate and stepped out. Beside him, Jian Jinghong, who was wearing the sword master mask, also stepped out. He was Yi Tianqing's disciple and was in the sword sect echelon like Yiguchen. This time, only the two of them entered. Looking at the two people who directly stepped into the cave. Even Meng Zhen and Meng Churen could only snort coldly and did not say anything. As soon as he stepped into the cave, Yiguchen immediately felt a terrifying sword pressure surging over like toppling mountains and overturning seas. The pressure was even stronger than the pressure of the sword tomb. "There's actually such a strong sword chi pressure?" Yiguchen was also slightly surprised. But he quickly adjusted and released all kinds of sword Dao power to resist. As for Jian Jinghong, the sword mark between his eyebrows also released a sword intent, like the power of the heavenly Dao. It was the embryonic form of the heavenly Dao sword intent that Jian Jinghong possessed. He turned to Yiguchen and said, "Brother Dugu, this kind of sword chi pressure is already considered weak. The entire skyless sword realm will exert different pressures according to the strength of the people who enter." Yiguchen heard this and nodded slightly. Even with their cultivation, they were facing such a strong pressure. If it were those venerables or even false saints, what kind of pressure would they face? Now Yiguchen could understand how powerful the proud divine prefecture was. The sword chi pressure that a false saint expert faced might be more than 100 times stronger than now. The Sword Dao Alliance's proud divine prefecture, I really want to see what kind of person he is, Yiguchen thought to himself. Chapter 11:19. The cave was dark and deep, and the pressure of the sword chi was even greater than the pressure of the sword tomb. Therefore, Yiguchen and Jian Jinghong walked very slowly. However, the two of them both had the sword will of the creation realm. Yiguchen, in addition to the creation realm universal sword accident, also had 4 types of sword Dao, so it was easier for him to resist the pressure of the sword chi. But his spiritual dwelling was broken, and in terms of vital energy, he did not have the advantage of Jian Jinghong. Comparing the two of them were still advancing at about the same speed. After an unknown period of time, in the deepest part of the cave, there was a layer of wave-like barrier, glowing with a rainbow light, like the surface of a lake under the morning sun. That is... Yiguchen took a closer look. That should be the real entrance to the heavenless sword realm. The path of the cave was just a preliminary screening. Jian Jinghong said. In other words, this cave with a stronger sword chi than the sword tomb was just a preliminary screening, and did not even really enter the heavenless sword realm. Brother Dugu, there is still a chance for us to turn back now. If we were to truly step into this barrier, there would be no turning back. Either we break through it completely, or we are trapped within it. Or we will die. Jian Jinghong's tone was grim. Brother Jinghong, at this point, do you still need to say such words? Yi Guchen smiled. Whether it was to find the proud divine prefecture, or to seek an opportunity to transform his spiritual dwelling, Yi Guchen had no reason to retreat. Ha, I said too much. Jian Jinghong also laughed heartily. He and Yi Guchen were very similar in some ways. For the sword Dao, they were not afraid of life and death. The two of them smiled at each other and stepped into the barrier at the same time. In an instant, it was as if they had experienced an eternity of time and space. The space was distorted, and the four directions were turned upside down. After the chaos, when Yi Guchen woke up again, he found himself on a mountain peak. The whole world, the sky was high and the sea was wide, surrounded by an endless sea. Only the mountain peak that Yi Guchen was on stood alone in the vast sea. This scene was extremely strange. Is this the Heavenless Sword Realm? This reminded Yi Guchen of when he was in the Saint Origin dynasty. He had entered the Heaven Path Sword Realm set up in the sword-seeking stele by Yi Tianxing, the 8th generation swordmaster. Yi Guchen looked around but did not see Jian Jinghong's figure. Very clearly, anyone who entered the Heavenless Sword Realm would be separated. The Heavenly Dao Sword Realm was set up by the 8th generation Sword Grandmaster. It contains the Sword Grandmaster's ultimate techniques and 108,000 sword souls. Since this skyless sword realm was set up by the 7th generation sword sect, nameless, I wonder if it also contains the sword sect's ultimate techniques. Yi Guchen could not help but think. The ultimate technique of the sword sect was a powerful technique that was unique to the sword sect. It was a martial art that only the sword master echelon could inherit. Every sword master echelon was extraordinarily powerful. Yi Guchen already had the 108,000 heaven-ripping sword soul and the reincarnation sword lotus. Gu Xiaoyang had the brilliant void sword qi and the firmament sword print. Huang Qianqiu had also used the sword sect's ultimate technique, the boundless holy sword. Di Haoyan and Jian Jinghong were both sword master echelons. They definitely had at least one sword sect's ultimate technique. If I can obtain more sword sect's ultimate techniques, perhaps I will have a slight advantage over the other sword master echelons, Yi Guchen pondered. He recalled the heavenly sword of heaven and earth that he had used once at the Sky Sword Peak. He learned from the 8th generation sword grandmaster, Yi Tianxing, that move was the 7th generation sword grandmaster's ultimate technique. Shaking his head slightly, Yi Guchen temporarily cleared his distracting thoughts. The most important thing for him now was to think about how to pass the skyless sword realm. At this moment, Yi Guchen suddenly felt as if there was a gaze on him. His senses were already extremely sharp. At this moment, he raised his head and looked over. On the cliff in front of him, a faint shadow suddenly disappeared. Yi Guchen frowned slightly. He was certain that there was definitely a gaze on him just now. And it was definitely not Jian Jinghong who entered with him. Suddenly, under Yi Guchen's feet, lines of formation patterns spread out. Streaks of sword qi rushed out from the ground. Is the test finally here? Yi Guchen's figure flashed. Hundreds of sword qi rushed out from the ground and finally merged into a giant sword. Yi Guchen observed carefully. He also had some understanding of sword formations. In addition, he was familiar with swords. It was not too difficult for him to break this kind of sword formation. Soon, this first sword formation was broken. And the moment the sword formation was broken, the sea surface in front suddenly rumbled and rolled, waves splashing everywhere. Under Yi Guchen's slightly surprised gaze, the second mountain peak rose from the bottom of the sea. Such a scene was truly somewhat alarming. The formation patterns under Yi Guchen's feet lit up. He was once again transported to the second mountain peak. On this mountain peak, there was also a large formation. The difficulty was more than double that of the previous large formation. This large formation contains the Tao of Yin and Yang. Yi Guchen could see at a glance. He continued to break it. The lethality of this sword formation was not very strong, but it was very complicated. If one did not have a certain understanding of sword Tao, they would definitely not be able to break this sword formation. With Yi Guchen's talent as a sword demon and the assistance of the ancient tree of enlightenment, Yiguchen quickly broke the second sword formation. The moment he broke the yin-yang sword formation, the third mountain peak rose from the sea surface in front of him. And this third sword formation seemed to contain the power of heaven and earth. Sword chi rushed into the sky and suppressed Yiguchen. The power of this sword formation was more than double that of the second sword formation. This sword formation contains the power of heaven and earth, but it only lacks one thing, and that is people. Yiguchen's black eyes were deep and saw through the foundation of the formation. When he thought of the two great formations from before, he suddenly felt enlightened and enlightened. The first sword formation is one yuan, the second is two polarities, the third is heaven, earth, and man 3 talents. Yiguchen had a kind of enlightenment. That was to say, in the heavenless sword realm, it was very likely that there were 10 large formations. The power of each large formation was multiple times the power of the previous large formation. Do not look down on this double. If this continued to stack up to the final 8th, 9th, and even 10th sword formation, that degree of difficulty was unimaginable. Its complexity and power might even be 1,000 times more than the first sword formation. Is this the difficulty set by the 7th generation sword sect Nameless? Even Yiguchen also sighed slightly in his heart. He now somewhat understood why the proud divine continent would be trapped in the heavenless sword realm. It was very likely that he was trapped in the 9th or 10th sword formation. Following that, Yiguchen spent several days before completely breaking through the 3rd sword formation. The 4th 4-symbol sword formation that followed, the power was twice as complicated and difficult as the 3rd 3-talent sword formation. Yiguchen naturally spent more time. And in this passage of time, the people outside the heavenless sword realm were also somewhat impatient. Chapter 11:20. In a twinkle, 7 days had already passed since Yiguchen and Jian Jinghong entered the heavenless sword realm. And the crowd outside the heavenless sword realm not only did not decrease, it even increased instead. They all wanted to know very much what the final outcome would be for Yiguchen and Jian Jinghong. Would they perish inside, or escape with their lives? As for the so-called finding the proud divine continent, virtually no one harbored this hope. Except for Yi Tianqing alone. Not knowing why, he just had a vague intuition. Yiguchen was a person who could create miracles. But along with the passing of day after day, the confidence and patience in some people's hearts were also gradually worn clean. There's no movement at all for so many days. Could he have already perished inside? Meng Churen had also been waiting outside the heavenless sword realm all along. Her greatest hope now was for Yiguchen to perish, then let her big brother Luo Yu ascend and become the Jiankui. The heavenless sword realm is the most mysterious and dangerous of the 4 great mystic realms. Since ancient times, who knows how many powerhouses and geniuses have been trapped inside. I admit that Dugubai has innate saint talent, but the current him should probably be on the brink of despair too. Luo Yu shook his head slightly and said, although he was a little uncomfortable with not being able to become the Jiankui, his personality was not too extreme. But he still felt that Yiguchen did not have a trace of hope. Arrogant people always have to pay the price. Sometimes, this price will be life. Meng Jin gave a cold laugh. He suddenly turned his head to look at Yi Tianqing, his tone carrying a hint of amusement as he asked, Deputy Alliance Head Yi, I wonder if you have any regrets in your heart now? Yi Tianqing's expression was indifferent from beginning to end. He said coolly, I never do things that I regret. Moreover, it's too early to make a judgment now. Huh, Deputy Alliance Head E means that kid can come out safely? Or is it that he can bring Alliance Head Proud Divine Continent out together? Meng Zhen found it funny and could not help shaking his head and laughing. The other 3 pseudo-saints following him also started laughing at the same time. This joke was unavoidably a little funny. In their eyes, Yiguchen could not even protect himself. Find the proud divine continent? Wait for your next life. The laughter of Meng Zhen, Meng Churen, and the others was rather jarring to the ears of the Sacred Cliff College students. I really hope that Brother Dugu can come back alive and give them a good slap in the face. Ling Imoshu's eyes were cold. I believe in Master. After all, he has overcome so many difficulties. This one will be the same. Mu Xingzu clasped her hands together and prayed for Yi Guchen in her heart. Time flowed by. 7 days passed. Half a month had already passed since Yi Guchen and Jian Jinghong entered the heavenless sword realm. Within the skyless sword realm, within a killing array, Jian Jinghong's clothes were stained with blood, and there were sword wounds all over his body. A terrifying sword concept emanated from his glabella and enveloped the surroundings. It was the heavenly sword intent. As Jian Jinghong's innate ability, the heavenly Dao sword intent was undoubtedly powerful. But at this moment he could only barely resist. He couldn't resist at all, let alone break the formation. The 7th formation. Am I, Jian Jinghong, going to die here today? Blood kept flowing from the corner of Jian Jinghong's mouth. As a disciple of heavenly love, he was ranked 2nd on the sword roll. Jian Jinghong's talent and strength in sword Dao was indeed unquestionable. In a short half a month he broke through to the 7th formation. However, as soon as he entered the 7th formation, Jian Jinghong could immediately feel the pressure increase exponentially. He had a premonition that he couldn't break through this sword formation. It was even very likely that he would die here. However, the truth was indeed not out of Jian Jinghong's expectations. Looking at the 7 crisscrossing sword auras in the sword formation, Jian Jinghong's eyes were filled with determination. 1 essence, 2 forms, 3 talents, 4 symbols, 5 elements, 6 directions. I've broken through these 6 sword formations. Am I really going to die in this 7 stars sword formation? Jian Jinghong gritted his teeth. He wasn't afraid of death. If he was, Jian Jinghong wouldn't have chosen to enter the heavenless sword realm. He was afraid that he would disappoint his master, heavenly love. At this moment, 7 sword auras that were like galaxies pierced towards Jian Jinghong. In the next moment, Jian Jinghong was about to die. Sorry, master, disciple has disappointed you. Brother Dugu, I hope you can fulfill master's expectations and save the alliance leader of the proud divine region. Jian Jinghong muttered in his heart. He pointed his finger at the space between his eyebrows, wanting to completely erupt the power of the heavenly Dao sword intent and make a final gamble. And at this moment, the sequence emblem on the back of his hand suddenly lit up with a dazzling light. Then, this ball of light enveloped Jian Jinghong's entire body. In the blink of an eye, this ball of light carried Jian Jinghong's entire body and directly disappeared on the spot. After Jian Jinghong disappeared, on the cliff of this mountain peak, a hazy figure vaguely appeared and let out a low murmur. The sword sect echelon has a chance to avoid death. Consider it your luck. Then, there's only one person left, this hazy figure muttered and disappeared on the spot again, as if evaporating. At the same time, in the barren mountains outside the heavenless sword domain. In the void, a burst of light suddenly surged, attracting the attention of everyone around. What's that? Everyone looked over at the same time. Yi Tianqing and the others also immediately looked over. The light dissipated, and a figure staggered out. His clothes were stained with blood and torn, and his entire person looked like he was severely injured. That's Jian Jinghong! Exclamations sounded from all directions. Disciple! Yi Tianqing's eyes flashed, and she immediately brought Jian Jinghong over and let him consume the medicinal pill. What's going on? Didn't they say that the heavenless sword domain is a dangerous place? How could Jian Jinghong be directly teleported out? Yes, it's really unbelievable. Many people revealed a look of surprise. Meng Zhen and the others also revealed a look of surprise. However, Jian Jinghong's miserable state still made everyone feel a chill in their hearts. As one of the most powerful sword Dao prodigies of the Sword Dynasty, it was indeed rare for Jian Jinghong to fall into such a sorry state. How could this be? Many people asked. Jian Jinghong shook his head and said, I don't know the details, but I could only break through to the 7th sword formation. I was destined to die, but in the end, I was somehow teleported out. So that's how it is. It's really strange. Everyone was confused. I'm sorry, Master. I couldn't find any trace of the Alliance Master of the proud Divine Prefecture. I've disappointed you. Jian Jinghong looked ashamed. It's fine. It's lucky to be able to come out alive. What about Dugubai? Yi Tianqing asked. We separated when we entered the heavenless sword domain. We don't know each other's situation. Jian Jinghong shook his head. These words made Mu Xingzu and the disciples of Sacred Cliff College reveal worried expressions. Even Jian Jinghong is in such a sorry state. Dugubai, whose spiritual palace was destroyed, is probably in an even worse situation. Many people thought so in their hearts. Meng Zhen stroked his beard and said, based on Jian Jinghong's situation, I'm afraid that kid is doomed. This is the consequence of not knowing one's limits. He's just throwing away his life in vain. Meng Charan curled her lips and smiled. Chapter 11:21. Following that, Jian Jinghong was transported out in a sorry state. Everyone lost even more hope in Yi Guqin. Even Jian Jinghong, who possessed the heavenly Dao sword, intent failed. Then how could Yi Guqin, whose divine abode was crippled, be any better? This was the instinctive thought in everyone's hearts. And at this moment, in the heavenless sword realm, Yi Guqin also already made it to the 7th array formation. His situation, however, was not what outsiders had imagined. Although Yi Guqin also had many wounds on his body, compared to Jian Jinghong, it was God knows how many times better. Looking at it now, it's lucky that my divine abode was broken. Otherwise, the array formation I'm facing might be more than 10 times more powerful than now, Yi Guqin muttered to himself. The 10 array formations in the heavenless sword realm would adjust their power appropriately according to the intruder's strength. Of course, it was only the power that was adjusted. As for the difficulty of cracking the array formation, there would not be any change. If a person who was not proficient in sword Dao fell into the heavenless sword realm, they would still be trapped to death, unable to escape for the rest of their lives. But to Yi Guqin, who possessed freakish sword Dao talent, he would crack these 10 sword arrays sooner or later. The difference was just the length of time. Just as Yi Guqin continued to crack the array formation in the heavenless sword realm. On the other side, within the Mola dynasty, Dugu Qiuma also followed Qingqing to the heavenly demon sect. The heavenly demon sect was originally a branch of the mystic demon palace. Because of some conflicts, as well as differences in ideology, this branch of people became independent and established the heavenly demon sect. Hence, the mystic demon palace people had always called the heavenly demon sect traitors. But because the heavenly demon sect's strength itself was not considered too weak, if the mystic demon palace wanted to completely eradicate it, they would also suffer great losses. Hence, the mystic demon palace had no choice but to let the heavenly demon sect become one of the 6 great factions. But even so, the mystic demon palace had never stopped suppressing the heavenly demon sect in all kinds of ways. And this Azura Blood Road, the mystic demon palace undoubtedly also wanted the heavenly demon sect to continue to be at the bottom, and then lose the qualifications to participate in the Azura Blood Road. Losing this great opportunity, without the Azura blood, the heavenly demon sect's strength would undoubtedly weaken again. The heavenly demon sect was located in the heavenly mountain range. At this moment, a man and a woman appeared on the outskirts of the celestial demon mountain range. It was Dugu Qiuma and Qingqing. We're here. This is the heavenly demon sect. What do you think, young Master Dugu? Qingqing said with a smile. Not bad. Dugu's tone was indifferent. Inside the celestial devil mountain range, there were towering pavilions and caves everywhere. Shadows of people came and went. It was indeed a flourishing place. Moreover, Dugu's mystic ability could faintly sense some powerful and obscure auras lurking within the heavenly demon mountain range. They must be some false saint experts from the heavenly devil sect. Since it's possible, then young Master Dugu can join the heavenly demon sect. I'm sure those elders will fight to take you as their disciple. Qingqing pursed her lips and smiled. 100 bottles of Azura blood. I only agreed to help the heavenly demon sect participate in the Azura Blood Road, but I never said I would become a disciple of the heavenly demon sect. Dugu Qiuma indifferently said. Although the heavenly demon sect's strength wasn't bad, it couldn't be compared to the Sword Dynasty. As for his original body, Yi Guqin, his identity was already Jian Kuei from the Sword Dynasty. Compared to this identity, Duguchumo really didn't care about the identity of a mere heavenly demon sect disciple. All right then. Ching held her forehead, somewhat speechless as she muttered in her heart. Others want to join the heavenly demon sect but don't have the chance. Now that I'm begging you to join, you don't even appreciate it. Of course, Ching could only say this in her heart. After this period of contact, she also understood that Duguchumo was a man of his word. It was impossible to change his mind. Then, Ching led Duguchumo into the heavenly demon sect's mountain gate. The two of them immediately attracted the attention of a group of heavenly demon sect disciples. Saintess Ching is back? Who's that white-haired young man next to her? He's actually so close to Saintess Ching? And by the looks of it, Saintess Ching seems to be rather polite to that white-haired young man. What's going on? The heavenly demon sect disciples discussed all around. As the saintess of the heavenly demon sect, Ching's strength and looks were on par. Naturally, she was the object of adoration in the hearts of many heavenly demon sect disciples. And Ching had always been blunt with the opposite sex. This was the first time the heavenly demon sect disciples saw Ching being so polite to someone of the opposite sex. For a moment, many cold and dangerous gazes fell on Duguchumo. If Ching was not beside them, these heavenly demon sect disciples would probably not be able to hold back and directly attack Duguchumo. As members of the Mola dynasty, they had no qualms about attacking in the first place. Looks like you're quite popular in the heavenly demon sect. Feeling those gazes that seemed to penetrate him, Duguchumo's tone was indifferent. Young Master Dugu, please don't mind them. They don't know your identity, Ching said hurriedly. She was afraid that Duguchumo would stare the group of heavenly demon sect disciples to death at the slightest disagreement. If that happened, the situation would be unsalvageable. If I minded, they would have been a bunch of dead people long ago. Duguchumo narrowed his eyes slightly and sneered. Not everyone was like Ching, who had a spiritual item protecting her sea of consciousness. Against these small fries of the heavenly demon sect, Duguchumo could kill a bunch of them with a single glance. However, this was someone else's sect after all, and Duguchumo also needed the Azura blood, so he did not attack. Just as Ching was about to lead Duguchumo to a heavenly demon sect elder, a strange voice suddenly sounded. Oh, isn't this our saintess Ching? Where did you bring back this wild man from? As these words were spoken, a flirtatious woman in a revealing red dress appeared. Her snow-white breasts were exposed as she walked over, swaying her slender waist. The woman looked at Ching with a gaze that vaguely contained some jealousy and coldness. Li Rui, why should I report to you what I do? Ching's tone also turned cold. The flirtatious woman named Li Rui's lips curled up as she sneered. Our heavenly demon sect is not some refugee camp that can bring back any random cat or dog. Shut up. Ching's expression changed slightly. She knew that the young man beside her was a ruthless person who had slaughtered 13 cities. He definitely could not be provoked casually. Sure enough, in the next moment, Ching felt a strand of coldness assault her. Duguchumo tilted his head slightly and looked at Li Rui. He said indifferently, You dare to say that again? A spirit bridge of heaven and earth cultivator dares to threaten me? Ching, aren't your eyesight a little too low? You actually found such an arrogant person. I'm standing right here. What can you do to me? Li Rui placed her hands on her hips and revealed a mocking smile. Duguchumo also smiled. However, his smile was very cold. His personality was naturally cruel and ruthless, so at this moment he naturally would not be indifferent. Duguchumo's dark golden soul-devouring demon eye suddenly stared straight at Li Rui. Chapter 11:22. In the blink of an eye, Li Rui felt as if her sea of consciousness was being overturned. The spirit power in her sea of consciousness could not help but go berserk, as if it was going to burst out of her head. Li Rui clutched her head with both hands and could not help but let out a shrill scream. Blood flowed out of her 7 orifices at the same time. Her seductive face was covered in blood and looked extremely miserable. The contempt and arrogance from before were nowhere to be seen. What's going on? What happened to senior sister Li Rui? The surrounding heavenly devil sect disciples turned pale with fright. They only saw Li Rui suddenly clutching her head and screaming as blood flowed out of her 7 orifices. They did not understand what had happened. No one would have thought that Dugu Chioma had intervened, because he had only glanced at Li Rui indifferently. "Young master, please have mercy and spare her lowly life," Qingqing hurriedly said. She did not really sympathize with Li Rui. It was Dugu Chioma. If he killed Li Rui, it would inevitably affect the future cooperation with the Heavenly Devil sect. Dugu Chioma retracted his gaze. At the same time, he frowned and thought to himself, "It's still not enough. At my current level, I can't kill a divine dwelling stage heaven pride with the soul-devouring demon eye." Li Rui's cultivation was also at the divine dwelling stage. Therefore, Dugu Chioma could only injure her with the soul-devouring demon eye, and could not directly crush their heads like he did with the other small fries. But when Dugu Chioma broke through to the divine dwelling stage, the soul-devouring demon eye's ability would naturally skyrocket. It might even unlock new abilities. Li Rui's body collapsed on the ground, breathing heavily, her chest heaving violently. She took out a handkerchief to wipe the blood from her face. Her face was pale. She looked at Dugu Chioma with a faint trace of fear in her eyes. "Impossible, this young man only has the cultivation of the heaven and earth spirit bridge stage. How could he make me so miserable with just a glance?" Li Rui roared in her heart, unable to understand. Since Dugu Chiomo's cultivation was slightly lower, she did not immediately associate him with the white-haired sword demon who had caused a bloodbath in the Molo dynasty. Because the white-haired sword demon had massacred 13 cities and even killed many blood-ranking heaven prides, the outside world naturally thought that his cultivation level should be at least at the divine dwelling stage. No one would have thought that Dugu Chioma, who had killed more than 10 blood-ranking prodigies, was only at the heaven and earth spirit bridge. "I'm sorry, young master, we've made a joke out of the Sky Fiend sect," Qingqing said, shaking her head. Subsequently, Qingqing gave a brief explanation. As it turned out, she and Li Rui were rivals for the position of saintess of the Sky Demon sect. In the end, Qingqing succeeded while Li Rui failed. Naturally, she was hostile towards Qingqing. That was why they were being targeted. "Qingqing, as the holy maiden of the heavenly demon sect, you actually colluded with outsiders to harm your fellow sect members. I'm going to report this to the elders." Li Rui shrieked, her face full of resentment. After suffering such a loss, she was naturally unable to swallow this anger. Dugu Chioma frowned slightly, killing intent flashing in his eyes. If they weren't in the heavenly demon sect, Dugu Chioma wouldn't mind killing her. Just then a deep voice sounded, "What's going on?" An old man wearing a black robe with a skull pattern appeared. His aura was strong, and he was a celestial palace expert. "Greetings, Elder Kuyuan." The surrounding heavenly demon sect disciples cupped their hands in greeting. "Elder Kuyuan, you must seek justice for me. Saintess Qingqing actually brought outsiders here and attacked me. I hope Elder Kuyuan will severely punish her, and that boy must die." Li Rui walked directly to Elder Kuyuan, complaining in a shrill voice. "Is that so?" Elder Kuyuan looked at Qingqing and then focused his gaze on Dugu Chioma. While crying, Li Rui secretly glanced at Qingqing, a vengeful sneer in her eyes. She obviously thought that Qingqing would be punished by Elder Kuyuan. However, Li Rui saw that Qingqing was looking at her with a hint of mockery in her eyes. What's going on? She doesn't seem worried at all? Li Rui's heart sank. Qingqing, this person, could he be? Not only was there not the slightest trace of anger on Elder Kuyuan's face, the gaze with which he looked at Dugu Chioma even contained a trace of surprise and faint joy. "Elder Kuyuan, I'm glad I didn't disappoint you. I've brought him here." Qingqing cupped her hands and said. This scene caused all of the surrounding Sky Devil sect's disciples to be at a loss. What's going on? Li Rui was also a little stunned, not understanding what was going on. Elder Kuyuan looked at Dugu Chioma. Although he was a little surprised by Dugu Chiyoma's realm, he still said, I didn't expect this young friend to be the white-haired sword demon who recently stirred up a storm in the Molo dynasty and massacred 13 cities. Now that I've met him today, he's indeed extraordinary. Elder Kuyuan's words rang out. The atmosphere instantly froze. All the surrounding heavenly demon sect disciples looked at Dugu Chiyoma at the same time. Their eyes were wide open, as if their eyeballs were about to pop out of their sockets. What? He's the white-haired sword demon? He's the unparalleled demon king who massacred 13 cities. Right, he has white hair, and his right eye is dark gold. He does match the rumored white-haired sword demon's appearance, but his realm, there was an uproar in the heavenly demon mountain range. It could be said that apart from his realm, Dugu Chiyoma perfectly matched the rumored white-haired sword demon in all other aspects. White-haired sword demon. How could it be him? He's just a heaven and earth spirit bridge. Li Rui's legs trembled, and she fell to the ground with a thud. Her eyes were still filled with shock. She recalled how Dugu Chiyoma had only glanced at her, and she was in so much pain that she wished she was dead. She suddenly understood that Dugu Chiyoma was most likely the white-haired sword demon. Many of the surrounding heavenly demon sect disciples felt a chill in their hearts when they recalled their hostility towards Dugu Chiyoma. If they were in a different environment, they would have become a pile of corpses. It's a wise decision for you to join our heavenly demon sect. Elder Ku Yuan chuckled. Although Dugu Chiyoma's realm was on the low side in his expectations, no matter what, he was still a legendary figure. It was not bad for him to join the heavenly demon sect. When Dugu Chiyoma heard that, he frowned and said, That's not my condition. What's the matter? Elder Ku Yuan looked at Qing Qing. Qing Qing smiled helplessly and said, I'm sorry, Elder Ku Yuan. Young Master Dugu agreed to help our heavenly demon sect participate in the Azura Blood Road, but he did not agree to join the heavenly demon sect. Moreover, the reward is not 10 bottles of Azura blood, but 100 bottles. Qing Qing lowered her head after saying that. Her expression was a little unnatural, and it was obvious that she did not think it was possible. What? 100 bottles of Azura blood? Elder Ku Yuan's face changed when he heard that. Chapter 11:23. Dugu's exorbitant demand was beyond Elder Ku Yuan's expectations. In truth, when someone in the heavenly demon sect had proposed to recruit Dugu with 10 bottles of Azura blood, the other elders had objected. They felt that there was no need to waste 10 bottles of Azura blood. No matter how weak the heavenly demon sect was, it was still one of the 6 great factions of the Molo Empire. In their minds, as long as the heavenly demon sect extended an olive branch, Dugu would be begging for a demon to agree. How could he refuse? It should be said that the heavenly demon sect did not accept just anyone. But in the end, the heavenly demon sect still decided to use 10 bottles of Azura blood just in case. After all, the heavenly demon sect could not be at the bottom of the Azura Blood Road. But now, Dugu had come to the heavenly demon sect. However, his request had far exceeded Elder Ku Yuan's expectations. Not only Elder Ku Yuan, all of the surrounding heavenly devil sect's disciples were also shocked by Dugu Chiyoma's words. They did use the Azura blood to cultivate, but it was calculated by drops. An ordinary heavenly demon sect disciple would only have a few dozen to 100 drops of Azura blood. It could not be calculated by bottles. Li Rui also took a deep breath, and the shock in her eyes gradually turned into calmness. She knew that Elder Ku Yuan would definitely not agree to Dugu Chiyoma's absurd request. As expected, Elder Ku Yuan frowned deeply. He looked at Dugu Chiyoma and said, Little friend Du, are you joking? Elder, do you think I'm joking? Dugu asked indifferently. You should know that the Azura blood is measured by drops. 10 bottles of Azura blood is already very valuable. Is it not enough for you to make a move? Elder Ku Yuan asked in a low voice. Dugu shook his head, and the corners of his lips curved in a sneer. I know that my value is comparable to 100 bottles of Azura blood. Elder Ku Yuan did not think much of Dugu's words. If Duguqima was a heaven pride of the third layer of the divine dwelling stage, Elder Kuyuan would naturally seriously consider it. However, Dugu's cultivation at the fifth level of the heaven and earth spirit bridge had already caused Elder Kuyuan to question the authenticity of the rumors. Could a cultivator at the fifth level of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth kill more than 10 geniuses of the blood ranking and massacre 13 cities? Doubt arose in Elder Kuyuan's heart. At this moment, Li Rui was unyielding. Her eyes flashed with a hint of schadenfreude. It was Qing Qing who had brought Dugu here. If things went wrong, Qing Qing, the saintess, would also be affected. This was something Li Rui was happy to see. She hurriedly instigated from the side, "Elder Kuyuan, I think the legend of the white-haired sword demon is most likely just a rumor. You can't believe it." Elder Kuyuan's face darkened. Naturally, he could not agree to Dugu's request. "I'm sorry, but I can't promise you 100 bottles of Azura blood." Elder Kuyuan's tone turned cold. Heh. Dugu Chioemo did not say anything. Anyway, it would be the heavenly demon sect who would regret it, not him. On the side, Qing Qing also bit her lips. She could feel that Dugu Chioemo was hiding very deeply, and she also had an intuition. If the heavenly demon sect hired Dugu Chioemo, the blood path would absolutely be foolproof. Unfortunately, Elder Kuyuan did not believe Dugu Chioemo, and did not even bother to report this matter to the higher-ups of the heavenly demon sect. Just when the atmosphere was a little stiff, suddenly, a long roar sounded from a cave dwelling in the heavenly demon mountain range. A powerful aura of the divine dwelling stage spread out. I finally broke through to the second layer of the divine dwelling stage. I, Yen Kuan, will definitely be ranked in the top 10 of the blood ranking. A young man in a green robe broke out of the cave dwelling. The aura of the second layer of the divine dwelling stage spread out, sweeping across the surrounding mountains and forests. It's Yen Kuan. He finally came out. He broke through to the second layer of the divine dwelling stage. Yen Kuan's strength has greatly increased. It seems that our heavenly demon sect will be saved on the Azura blood path. Seeing the young man in a green robe appear, the disciples of the heavenly demon sect began to discuss. Yen Kuan. Li Rui's bewitching face also revealed a look of infatuation. As for Elder Kuyuan, his gloomy face also looked a lot better because of Yen Kuan's appearance. His gaze towards Duguqima could not help but carry a trace of contempt. With Yen Kuan, whose strength had greatly increased, was there a need to recruit Duguqioemo? He actually came out. Qing Qing knitted her brows in a frown. He is. Dugu Chioemo said casually. He is the chosen of my heavenly demon sect. His strength was below mine before. I was ranked 14th on the blood ranking, and he was ranked 15th. But this time he broke through to the second layer of the divine dwelling stage. It seems that he has hopes of being ranked in the top 10 of the blood ranking, Qing Qing said. At the same time, she sighed inwardly. After Yen Kuan came out, the heavenly demon sect did not seem to need Dugu Chioemo anymore. Looking at you, you seem to dislike Yen Kuan, Dugu Chioemo said. It's just a little annoying. Qing Qing pursed her red lips. After Yen Kuan came out, seeing so many people gathered at the mountain gate, he stepped into the air and came over. When he saw Qing Qing, his eyes lit up. I didn't expect to see Qing Qing as soon as I came out. Were you waiting for me here? Yen Kuan laughed. Qing Qing's pretty face froze, and she did not answer. Li Rui stared at Qing Qing with jealousy. She admired Yen Kuan, but Yen Kuan only treated her as a plaything. His heart was still with Qing Qing. Yen Kuan, you came out at the right time. Otherwise, our heavenly demon sect would have wasted 10 bottles of Azura's blood. Elder Kuyuan smiled. What's going on? Yen Kuan was a little confused. Then, someone explained to him a little. Only then did Yen Kuan notice Dugu Chioemo. There was also a playful smile at the corners of his mouth. A heaven and earth spirit bridge cultivator dares to ask for 100 bottles of Azura's blood based on a rumor. Qing Qing, you want to bring such a person back to the heavenly demon sect? Yen Kuan's tone was full of disdain. As soon as he came out of seclusion, his strength skyrocketed, and his confidence swelled. Looks like there's nothing to talk about. Dugu Chio Mo turned to leave. Wait. Elder Ku Yuan frowned. What? Dugu Chiomo's face was indifferent. Since you don't want to join the Heavenly Demon Sect, then forget it. The Heavenly Demon Sect doesn't need to recruit you, but hand over the 10 bottles of Azura's blood as a deposit. Elder Ku Yuan said coldly. It could be said that he changed his attitude faster than flipping a book. Elder, I've already agreed to give those 10 bottles of Azura's blood to young Master Dugu. Qingqing said through gritted teeth. She had already discussed it on the way here with Dugu Chiomo. No matter the final result, the 10 bottles of Azura's blood would belong to Dugu Chiomo. After all, she couldn't let Dugu Chiomo make a trip for nothing. Qingqing, don't say anything. 10 bottles of Azura's blood isn't a small number. We can't let this guy take advantage of us. Yen Kuan frowned and said sharply when he saw Qingqing protecting Dugu Chiomo. Dugu Chiomo narrowed his dark golden eyes. His gaze towards Yen Kuan was already filled with killing intent. Just as the atmosphere was tense, a Heavenly Demon Sect disciple suddenly ran in from outside the mountain gate in a panic. Something bad has happened. People from the Mystic Demon Palace, 6 Desire Demon Sect, and Demonic Beast Sect are here. What? Elder Ku Yuan was shocked when he heard this. Qingqing's gaze was also slightly shaken. As for Yen Kuan, a trace of fear flashed in his eyes. But when he thought about how he had already broken through, that trace of fear turned into confidence. Chapter 11:24. Hearing the Sky Demon Sect disciples' words, the Sky Demon Sect members present seemed to have recalled some bad memories, and their expressions turned ugly. Visit the mountain? Dugu turned to Qingqing. Qingqing explained, the so-called visit is when the prodigies of other sects come to exchange pointers. The 6 major forces of the Molo dynasty often do this. But our Sky Demon Sect never ends well every time. Qingqing's expression didn't look too good either. Dugu knew that by not too good, it probably meant that they had been humiliated to the extreme. After all, the Sky Demon Sect was a branch of the Mystic Demon Palace. In terms of prodigies, they were definitely inferior to the other 5 major forces. Humph, those great influences have come knocking on our door. They clearly want to give our Heavenly Demon Sect a show of strength before the Azura Blood Road opens. Elder Ku Yuan's complexion darkened once more as he coldly said, Elder, don't worry. I'm not the same as before. Yen Kuan's words were filled with great confidence. In the past, when the 6 major sects visited each other's mountains, the Sky Demon Sect disciples suffered the most. Especially Yen Kuan, who had once humiliated himself by kneeling in front of a prodigy from the Mystic Demon Palace, causing him to lose all face. After that, Yen Kuan turned his grief into motivation and crazily went into seclusion to cultivate. That was how he had broken through. Haha, is the Sky Demon Sect so unwelcoming of old friends? An old voice sounded, and immediately, 3 groups of people walked in from outside the mountain gate. The 3 groups of people were from the Mystic Demon Palace, the Demonic Beast Sect, and the 6 Desires Demon Sect. Each group of people was led by 2 people. One of them was a venerable one, while the other was an outstanding junior. There weren't many people from the 3 major sects, but each of them had an extraordinary aura. The one who spoke was a supremacy from the Mystic Demon Palace called Fan Yuan. Beside him stood a gray-robed youth with an indifferent expression and a fixed gaze. Fan Yuan, you old fogey. Elder Ku Yuan's expression was gloomy. He knew that Fan Yuan and the others were here to attack the Sky Demon Sect's confidence. But they couldn't refuse. If they refused the other sect's visit, the Sky Demon Sect would lose all face, and their already low reputation would fall to the bottom. Yuan Huang, it's you. Yen Kuan looked at the gray-clothed youth beside Fan Yuan, and his eyes immediately turned red. It's Yuan Huang. It's him again. That's right. He was the one who defeated Holy Sun Yen Kuan at the mountain last time. He even made Holy Sun Yen Kuan kneel before him. Will it happen again this time? How is that possible? Holy Sun Yen Kuan has just come out of seclusion and his strength has increased greatly. This time, the one who should be worried is Yuan Huang. Some of the Sky Demon sect disciples in the area whispered to each other, but based on their words, their confidence in Yen Kun increased by leaps and bounds. Oh, so it's a defeated opponent. The gray-clothed youth called Yuan Huang shook his head indifferently. Yuan Huang, the current me cannot be compared to the past. This time, I will definitely return the humiliation from before in double. Yen Kun coldly shouted. Following the arrival of the three great sects, Dugu Chuma was left out in the cold. Primordial desolation he is. Dugu murmured. He is a sky pride of the mystic demon palace, ranked 11th on the blood ranking. His strength is not weak, but his brother, Yuan Hua, is even more powerful. Qing Qing said solemnly. Yuan Hua, the one ranked 3rd on the blood ranking. Dugu Chuma raised his brows slightly. Yuan Hua of the mystic demon palace was ranked 3rd on the blood ranking, just below Princess Luo Ho and the mysterious number 1 on the blood ranking. But this was nothing to Dugu Chuma. Even if Yuan Hua appeared in front of him, he would not have the slightest fear. Dugu Chuma did not have any feelings of fear or dread. Not only primordial desolation, but also Yang Buwei of the 6th Desire Demon sect, ranked 12th on the blood ranking. Zhong Lai of the Demonic Beast sect, ranked 13th on the blood ranking. Qing Qing's face was extremely solemn. She did not have much confidence against Yang Buwei and Zhong Lai, let alone primordial desolation. But if they were to challenge, only Saintess Qing Qing and Holy Sun Yen Kun among the younger generation of the Sky Demon sect could resist them. Even Li Rui would not be of much use. Let's cut the chit-chat and start the competition. Fan Yuan said with a fake smile. To put it nicely, it was a competition. To put it bluntly, it was bullying. Then, Elder Ku Yuan led the group to a square with a sullen face. There was a competition arena in the square. In the Sky Demon Mountain range, many elders and disciples rushed over after hearing the news, but none of them looked good. Let's begin. There was no lengthy ceremony, and the competition began immediately. A disciple of the Mystic Demon Palace went up the arena and said arrogantly, "Anyone who comes up, I'll take them all." Hearing this, the group of Sky Demon sect disciples' noses became crooked from anger. They were one of the 6 major sects, but they were looked down upon. Soon, a Sky Demon sect disciple jumped into the arena. But in just a few breaths, he was ruthlessly thrown out of the arena. Elder Ku Yuan's old face twitched slightly. Then, the disciples of the Demonic Beast sect and the 6th Desire Demon sect also went up the arena one after another to spar with the Sky Demon sect disciples. But without exception, the Sky Demon sect disciples were thrown out of the arena one by one. The few who won could only be considered a Pyrrhic victory. The group of Sky Demon sect elders' faces were as black as the bottom of a pot. Dugu Chio Emo didn't even have the interest to take a look. Under such humiliation, a heavenly demon sect disciple suddenly roared, "Holy Sun Yen Kun, please take action and teach these arrogant people a lesson." "Yes, Sacred Sun Yen Kun, please do it." The heavenly demon sect's disciples present all shouted loudly. If it was before, Yen Kun wouldn't have the confidence to do it. But now, he had just broken through to the 2nd layer of the divine dwelling, and Yuan Huang, who had defeated him before, was only at the 1st layer. Therefore, Yen Kun had absolute confidence that he could get back the face he had lost. He jumped into the arena with a step, his eyes cold and arrogant as he looked at Yuan Huang and shouted, "Yuan Huang, today we will wash away the shame of the past. Do you dare to come up to the arena and fight?" Yen Kun's aura of the 2nd layer of the divine dwelling realm gushed out. It was quite imposing, and it drew cheers from the group of Sky Demon sect disciples. Li Rui's face was even more dazed and infatuated. Only such a man was worthy of her infatuation. As for people like Dugu Chioma who relied on false reputation, Li Rui didn't even spare him a glance. With Yen Kun, there shouldn't be any problems. Even Yuan Huang isn't Yen Kun's match. Elder Ku Yuan's face was quite calm, without the slightest worry. On the contrary, there was a trace of worry in Qing Qing's eyes. Because she had carefully noticed that Yuan Huang's expression didn't change in the slightest because of Yen Kun's aura. Thinking of this, Qing Qing couldn't help but look at Dugu Chioma. Duguchuma looked at Yen Kun and Yuan Huang with indifference, as if watching two ants fighting. Let's begin. On the arena, Yen Kun's aura was wild. Just as he was about to attack. On the other side, Yuan Huang grinned, revealing a cruel sneer. Then, under Yen Kun's almost lifeless gaze, a powerful aura that was equally powerful and even more powerful than Yen Kun's burst out from Yuan Huang's body. Yuan Huang's strength was also at the second layer of the divine dwelling realm. Moreover, the second layer of the divine dwelling realm was incomparably powerful, almost close to the third layer. Chapter 11:25. All the heavenly demon sect disciples present were stunned, and then their expressions changed drastically. The faces of several heavenly demon sect elders, including Elder Ku Yuan, abruptly changed. The sudden appearance of the primordial desolation's aura was unexpected. The last time he came to the heavenly demon sect, he was only at the first layer of the divine dwelling stage. At that time, he ruthlessly defeated Yen Kun and even made him kneel in front of him. This was not only Yen Kun's humiliation, but also the heavenly demon sect's humiliation. Because Yen Kun was the chosen of the heavenly demon sect, making him kneel meant that the entire heavenly demon sect was kneeling before the mystic demon palace. Therefore, Yen Kun crazily cultivated, hoping to wash away the humiliation. Yen Kun's confidence had swelled when he broke through, and he just so happened to encounter the mystic demon palace. He naturally wanted to show off his skills and completely redeem the face he had lost. But when Yuan Huang's aura came out, Yen Kun's face turned green. He could clearly feel that Yuan Huang's strength was slightly stronger than his. How is this possible? Yen Kun gritted his teeth, his face full of disbelief. Heh, loser, do you think you're the only one who can improve? I've already broken through, but I haven't made a move yet. I'm preparing to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat on the Azura Blood Road. You should feel honored that I'm exposed early. Yuan Huang shook his head. His contemptuous attitude made the faces of the heavenly demon sect disciples turn red. Yen Kun, please make your move. You won't be weaker than him. Yeah, Yen Kun, show him what you're made of. The heavenly demon sect disciples were furious. Li Rui also shouted, Senior brother Yen Kun, do your best. Hearing the cheers of the surrounding heavenly demon sect disciples, Yen Kun took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. That's right, although his aura seems to be a little stronger than mine, I still have a chance of winning. Yen Kun still had some hope in his heart. On the other side, Duguchuma looked on coldly and shook his head. Qingqing noticed Duguchuma's action and couldn't help but ask, Young Master Dugu, does he not have any chance of winning? In fact, Qingqing also thought that Yen Kun's strength should be at its peak since he had just come out of seclusion. He will definitely lose this battle, Duguchuma said honestly. At this moment, Li Rui said with a hint of disgust, What right do you have to judge senior brother Yen Kun? You want to try again? Dugu's soul-devouring demonic eyes stared coldly at Li Rui. Li Rui shuddered and shut her mouth. However, there was still disdain in his eyes. On the arena, looking at Yen Kun who seemed to have regained his confidence, Yuan Huang's mouth curled into a cold smile. To make you fall into the abyss when you still have hope in your heart, that feeling must be very despairing. Don't talk nonsense. Yen Kun shouted coldly as he formed a seal with both hands and blasted it out. Genuine qi surged like a tide, condensing into a pitch-black demonic seal that crushed towards Yuan Huang. It was the Heavenly Devil Sect's Emperor-level martial art, the Heavenly Devil Seal. Today I, Yen Kun, will avenge my previous humiliation. Yen Kun carried a valiant aura as he pushed the Heavenly Demon Seal towards Yuan Huang. Elder Ku Yuan couldn't help but cheer. This kind of aura truly had some of the prestige of the Heavenly Devil Sect's saint. However, on the other side, Fan Yuan chuckled meaningfully. Really, stupid. Yuan Huang raised his hand as an even more terrifying fluctuation faintly spread out. Yuan Huang's entire arm became pitch-black like ink. He blasted out with one hand and a terrifying pitch-black demonic hand appeared as if it was going to pierce through the void. It's the mystic demon palace's black sky demon hand. Some elders of the heavenly devil sect exclaimed. The black sky demon hand was one of the strongest emperor-level martial arts in the mystic demon palace. Previously, in the younger generation of the mystic demon palace, only the blood-ranking third Yuan Hua had cultivated it. Now, his younger brother, Yuan Huang, had also succeeded in cultivating it. When the black sky demon hand appeared, the confident smile on Yan Kuen's face suddenly disappeared without a trace. Instead, it was replaced by fear and panic. Rumble. Without any surprise, the black sky demon hand directly pierced through the heavenly devil seal. This was not to say that the heavenly devil seal was inferior to the black sky demon hand. It was because Yan Kuen's heavenly devil seal had not been cultivated to perfection yet. Hence, it was easily broken by the black sky demon hand. Following that, the black sky demon hand's momentum did not diminish as it blasted towards Yan Kuen. Yan Kuen could only hurriedly defend. Finally, there was a loud bang, accompanied by a scream. Yan Kuen's figure was sent flying like a rag bag, spewing out large mouthfuls of blood from his mouth. Finally, he smashed hard outside the ring, his body twitching slightly. This heavenly devil sect's holy son, who had just broken through and was bursting with confidence, was sent flying by Yuan Huang's one blow. At this moment, he was paralyzed on the ground, looking as miserable as a dog. The surrounding heaven and earth were dead silent. The faces of Elder Ku Yuan and the rest were very interesting, from red to green, from green to green, a myriad of colors. There was also Li Rui, whose seductive face was covered with paleness. She could be said to have the most confidence in Yan Kuen. But now, Yan Kuen's appearance was simply no different from a dead dog. Was this the senior apprentice brother Yan Kuen she was obsessed with? There was also a group of heavenly devil sect disciples who were all in a daze, unwilling to believe the scene before their eyes. Instead, it was Qing who had expected it and was not too surprised. She quietly glanced at Dugu Qiuma. Dugu Qiuma did not pay attention to the battle at all, because there was no suspense at all. Ku Yuan, your heavenly devil sect's holy son is still as weak as ever. Fan Yuan could not help laughing. You! Elder Ku Yuan's face turned purple, but he could not say anything to refute. Because that was the truth. On the ring, Yuan Huang cast a glance at Yan Kuen and said indifferently, "Next time, don't send such a trash opponent. He can't even withstand one blow from me." Hearing this, Yan Kuen, who had just vomited blood, felt his blood surge up again. If he had known this would happen, he would rather not come out of seclusion than be humiliated again. Following Yan Kuen's defeat, the morale of the entire heavenly devil sect plummeted. Is the previous failure going to be repeated this time? Many heavenly devil sect disciples gritted their teeth, dejected looks on their faces. Elder Ku Yuan's face was also very ugly. The corner of his eyes fell on Dugu Qiuma, but he immediately shook his head. Even Yan Kuen, who was at the second layer of the divine dwelling stage, was not Yuan Huang's opponent. What was the use of a fifth-level heaven and earth spirit bridge cultivator? Even if this young man was the white-haired sword demon who had massacred 13 cities and set off a rain of blood, it was useless. Yang Bui, the heaven pride of the Sixth Desire demon sect, jumped onto the ring. His eyes swept playfully over Qingqing's beautiful body, and the corners of his mouth curved into an evil smile. Since the Holy Sun has been defeated, isn't there still the Holy Girl? Qingqing clenched her teeth. No matter what, she had to go up. Then, Qingqing faced Yang Bui. Yang Bui was ranked 12th on the blood ranking, while Qingqing was ranked 14th. In fact, there was not much suspense in this battle. Yang Bui attacked several times, tearing Qingqing's clothes in many places, revealing her tender white skin and slender legs. Damn it, he's teasing the holy girl. Some heavenly devil sect disciples' faces turned red with anger. Qingqing was the goddess in their hearts, but she was being teased like this. On the ring, Qingqing also bit her lips. She was a little angry, but there was nothing she could do. 7 emotions and 6 desires scatter. Yang Bui waved his hand, and a pink mist spread out. Qingqing was caught off guard and inhaled it. Her face immediately flushed red, and a hot chi rose from her body. She used most of her inner chi to suppress it, and her momentum weakened again. Good opportunity, 6 Desire Demon Palm. Yang Buwei smiled frivolously, and his palm struck toward Qingqing's soft breasts. Qingqing clenched her teeth. She knew she could not withstand this palm. She couldn't help but glance at the white-haired young man below the ring. Dugu Chioma's face was cold and indifferent from beginning to end, and there was no change in his expression because of her situation. Ha! Qingqing's lips curved into a faint self-deprecating smile. Dugu Chioma didn't have a deep relationship with her. What was she expecting? Chapter 1126. The cultivators of the Mara dynasty were mostly selfish and indifferent. When he saw injustice on the road, he would never do something like drawing his sword to help. Qingqing didn't know why she hoped that Dugu Chioma would help her. Dugu Chioma was a cold-blooded executioner who had slaughtered 13 cities. Ha, Qingqing little girl, you're going to lose. Yang Bui laughed evilly and slapped at Qingqing's breasts. The heavenly demon sect disciples were furious. Yang Bui not only wanted to defeat Qingqing, but he also wanted to take advantage of her. Shameless! Qingqing reprimanded and gritted her teeth. However, most of the true qi in her body was used to suppress her 7 emotions and 6 desires. It was impossible for her to block Yang Bui's attack. Looking at the incoming palm, Qingqing felt powerless and reluctantly closed her beautiful eyes. At this moment, there was the sound of wind breaking. Then, her delicate waist was wrapped in someone's arms. Qingqing immediately opened her beautiful eyes and was about to scold when her gaze froze. What entered her eyes was the side profile of a devilishly handsome man. His face was still expressionless. It was Dugu Chioma. Young Master Dugu. Qingqing's voice trembled. She didn't expect that the seemingly indifferent Dugu Chioma would really save her. Do you think I'm doing this for you? Dugu Chioma's expression was indifferent. Then for? Qingqing was suspicious. I'm only doing this for the sake of the 10 bottles of Azura blood. Dugu Chioma's tone was cold. Although he had spent some time with Qingqing, it was obviously not enough for Dugu Chioma to help. Moreover, Dugu Chioma was indifferent and wouldn't help others casually, even if the person was a beautiful woman. The only reason Dugu Chioma helped was because when Elder Ku Yuan asked for the 10 bottles of Azura blood, Qingqing said that she had already given them to Dugu Chioma. This was the reason why he was willing to help Qingqing. Otherwise, with Dugu Chioma's personality, even if Qingqing died in front of him, he wouldn't feel anything. So, that's how it is? For some reason, Qingqing suddenly felt empty in her heart. Her face darkened and there was a trace of disappointment. Seeing Dugu Chioma suddenly appear on the stage, the surrounding people were all surprised. Yen Kuan, who was recovering from his injuries, saw Dugu Chioma hugging Qingqing's waist. He couldn't help but rebuke, "What are you doing? Get down." On the other side, Yang Bui's expression also darkened slightly as he said, "Is this the style of your heavenly demon sect? Sending 2 if you can't win?" Yen Kuan's words Chioma as a disciple's disciple, Chioma's Chioma Chioma, Chio Chioma Chioma Chioma, Chioma's assess hearing this. The disciples of the mystic demon palace, demonic beast sect, and 6 desire demon sect all began to curse. Duels between sects were always 1-on-1. There was no such thing as 2-on-1. The expressions of Elder Ku Yuan and the rest turned gloomy once again. Today, their heavenly demon sect had lost all face. "You can go down first." Dugu Chioma put Qingqing down and said indifferently. Qingqing revealed a bitter smile and nodded slightly. She knew that although she wasn't weak, she didn't have much of a chance against Yuan Huang, Yang Bui, and Zhong Lai. Moreover, there was still the 7 emotions and 6 desires powder in her body that needed to be suppressed. Now, the heavenly demon sect's saint and saintess had both failed. The entire heavenly demon sect's morale had hit rock bottom. "Meddlesome brat, you've angered me. What should I do?" Yang Bui's lips curled into a sinister smile as he stared at Dugu Chioma like a venomous snake. In his opinion, this white-haired youth, who was only at the 5th stage of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge, was too weak to withstand a single blow. What do you want to do? Dugu Chuma tilted his head slightly and smiled coldly. Looking at the fearless Dugu Chuma, the disciples of the mystic demon palace, demonic beast sect, and Six Desires demon sect began to whisper to each other. Who is this white-haired youth? How dare he speak to Yang Bui like that? The heavenly demon sects Saint and Saintess have both failed. What's the use of him, a fifth-stage heaven and earth spirit bridge disciple? Obviously, the disciples of the three sects had mistaken Dugu Chuma as a disciple of the heavenly demon sect. The ignorant are fearless. Yuan Huang sneered. Huh, Kuyuan, is there no one else in your heavenly demon sect? You even sent out a fifth-stage heaven and earth spirit bridge disciple? Fan Yuan shook his head and laughed. He's not. Elder Ku Yuan was about to defend himself. On the stage, Yang Bui said coldly, Brat, no matter what, you have to pay the price for saving the damsel in distress. Oh, is that so, but... I don't want to. Dugu Chuma shook his head. So cowardly? Yang Bui sneered. No, but you don't deserve it. Dugu Chuma's lips curved into a sneer. When these words came out, the surrounding noise subsided. Everyone, including the disciples of the heavenly demon sect who knew Dugu Chuma's identity, were all stunned. Yang Bui, who was ranked 12th on the blood ranking, wasn't worthy of him fighting? After a brief moment of shock, the disciples of the three sects began to ridicule him. I didn't hear wrong, is this kid's brain fried? Even the heavenly demon sects Saint and Saintess were defeated. He's just a little disciple who hasn't even reached the divine dwelling stage. What qualifications does he have to say such words? He most likely wants to be a hero, but he's gone too far. Listening to the merciless ridicule of the disciples of the three sects, the elders and disciples of the heavenly demon sect felt their cheeks burning. Yen Kun said angrily, You're really full of nonsense. The strange relationship between Dugu Chuma and Qingqing made Yen Kun feel uncomfortable. He also berated Dugu Chuma like the disciples of the three sections. That's right, a person with an undeserved reputation dares to speak like that? Li Rui's eyes were filled with contempt. Qingqing was a little angry when she saw this. Dugu Chuma was ridiculed and targeted by the disciples of the three sects because he wanted to save her. But now Yen Kun, Li Rui and the others joined with outsiders to ridicule Dugu Chuma. Was this something a human would do? However, in the face of all kinds of ridicule and disdain, Dugu Chuma's eyes were incomparably indifferent. He said indifferently, It's not impossible if you want to fight. You, the three of you, come together. Dugu Chuma once again pointed out two people. It was Yuan Huang of the Mystic Demon Palace and Zhong Lai of the Demonic Beast Sect. Yuan Huang, Zhong Lai, and Yang Bui joined forces. Dugu Chuma was only interested in fighting. As soon as these words came out, it was like a meteorite smashing into the ocean, setting off monstrous waves. Crazy. Very crazy. Very crazy. Even the disciples of the three sects thought that the white-haired youngster had lost his mind. If that wasn't the case, how could he say such arrogant words? Chapter 11:27. Haha. Elder Fan Yuan of the Mystic Demon Hall couldn't help laughing out loud. The disciple of the heavenly demon sect was so arrogant that it was ridiculous. Are you talking about me? Yuan Huang pointed at his own face, as if unable to react in time. Who else? Dugu Chiomo's tone was indifferent. What an interesting ant. On the other side, Zhong Lai of the demonic beast sect also laughed. A kid at the 5th level of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth needed 3 divine dwelling stage heaven prides to join forces to fight him. Who gave him the courage to do so? This. Elder Ku Yuan opened his mouth, but no words came out. He also didn't expect things to develop to this point. But after thinking about it, Ku Yuan ultimately didn't explain Dugu Chiomo's identity. In any case, Dugu Chiomo wasn't a disciple of the heavenly demon sect, and it didn't matter if he died. However, the white-haired sword demon, who had just risen to fame in the Molo dynasty, was going to die just like that. It would be a shame. Oh, since that's the case, Zhong Lai, Yang Bui, why don't we play with this ant together? Yuan Huang leaped onto the arena. Sure. Zhong Lai also jumped onto the arena with a smile. Yuan Huang, Zhong Lai, and Yang Bui stood on the arena at the same time. They naturally didn't really want the three of them to join forces to deal with Dugu Qiuemo, but simply wanted to play with Dugu Qiuemo. The three of us have come up, you can make your move. Yuan Huang's voice was tinged with a hint of playfulness. He really wanted to know if the arrogant kid really had the courage to make a move. I can make a move, but I have to warn you, Dugu Qiuemo said indifferently. You're really troublesome, are you afraid? Hearing this, the disciples of the three sects all jeered. Say it, Yuan Huang said lazily. There is only one outcome for my enemies, and that is death. As Dugu Qiuemo's voice faded, a biting cold killing intent spread out. It was obvious that Dugu Qiuemo wouldn't make a move. Once he made his move, it would be an absolute killing blow. He would not hold back at all. Upon hearing these words, the Yuan Huang trio were slightly taken aback. They looked at each other, before bursting into laughter. The disciples of the three sects burst out laughing too. Even Fan Yuan was grinning from ear to ear as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. A cultivator at the 5th level of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth was threatening 3 heaven prides of the divine dwelling stage, one of whom was at the 2nd layer of the divine dwelling stage. Who gave him the guts? As for Sky Demon sect, many disciples had doubtful looks in their eyes. However, they knew that Dugu Qiuemo was the white-haired sword demon who had massacred 13 cities, so they didn't laugh at him. On the other hand, Yen Kuan and Li Rui looked at him with contempt. Especially Yen Kuan. Even a holy son like him was defeated by Yuan Huang in one move. Dugu Qiuemo's arrogant words, where was his face? The uproar and public opinion were all directed at Dugu. On the stage, Dugu Qiuemo looked at Yuan Huang and the other two and said indifferently, "Are you done laughing?" Yuan Huang shook his head and chuckled. "Since you want a battle to the death, then come. You're courting death, can't I satisfy you?" After he finished speaking, Elder Fan Yuan also said, "That's right. Since Yuan Huang has agreed to a battle to the death, then let's have a battle to the death." Fan Yuan's words were the final word. Generally speaking, the battle between the major sects could severely injure or even cripple the opponent. However, it could not endanger the opponent's life. Of course, if the two sects agreed to a battle to the death, then life and death would be left to fate. That's right, we also agree to a battle to the death. The leading elders of the Demon Beast sect and the 6 Desire Demons sect all nodded. In their view, since the Sky Demon sect disciples wanted to die, they should fulfill their wish. All right, you can make your move. Yuan Huang, Zhong Lai, and Yang Bui all stood with their hands behind their backs, waiting for Dugu Qiuemo to make his move. They looked at Dugu Qiuemo as if they were looking at a clown. That's what I want. Dugu Qiuemo's lips curled into a bloodthirsty and cruel sneer. His dark golden right eye was mixed with blood-red stripes and emitted a faint blood-red glow. The soul-devouring demon eye's ability was activated. In an instant, Yuan Huang and the other two felt their consciousness surging. Their soul power seemed to be attracted by something and was about to explode. Arg! 3 painful groans sounded at the same time. Yuan Huang was in the best condition because not only was his cultivation the highest, but he also had a spiritual object in his consciousness. Therefore, he was the least affected by the soul-devouring demon eye. But Yang Bui and Zhong Lai weren't so lucky. They felt their consciousness about to explode and their auras dropped by several %. What kind of technique is this? Yuan Huang and the other two turned pale with fright and lost their previous calmness. Dugu Qiuemo didn't respond. He formed a seal with one hand and a terrifying mystic force burst out. It was one of the top 10 ancient mystic arts, the sky-devouring mystic art. As Yi Guchen's doppelganger, Dugu Qiuemo naturally knew the sky-devouring mystic art. Coupled with the pure demon body and the power of the god-devouring sword, Dugu Qiuemo used the sky-devouring mystic art like a fish in water. His aura skyrocketed by 3 small realms and reached the 8th stage of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. At the same time, Dugu Qiuemo used so close, yet worlds apart and instantly landed in front of Yang Bui, whose aura was the most unstable. You. Yang Bui's face was pale as blood seeped out of his 7 orifices. He was the most affected by the soul-devouring demon eye, and his consciousness was a little unstable. Soul-devouring explosion. Duguchuma's eyes were bloodthirsty and cruel. He reached out with one hand and a ball of black light spread out. Yang Bui's body flew back and vomited blood. Evil primordial puppet. Duguchuma used the soul-devouring race's martial art again, and a black shockwave burst out. Yang Bui let out a blood-curdling shriek as cracking noises came from all over his body. Duguchuma revealed a cold smile and punched out, directly punching through Yang Bui's chest. A punch to the heart. Dead silence, everyone present, whether it was the heavenly demon sect's disciples or the disciples of the 3 sects, fell into an absolute daze. They were petrified and did not recover for a long time. Duguchuma obviously would not stop because of this. He turned his hand and punched at Zonglai again. Fire Wolf Lion. Zonglai's eyes were filled with horror as he hurriedly summoned his demonic beast. The demonic beast sect was famous for their beast taming, so Zonglai naturally had his own demonic beast. A fiery red demonic beast that looked like a wolf and a lion jumped out and spat out blazing flames. It turned into a red torrent and swept toward Duguchuma. Duguchuma's eyes shone with a cold light. He stretched out his hand and a black and vigorous devouring power spread out and turned into a ferocious black dragon head. This was the devouring skill that he had comprehended after comprehending the first level of the Heaven Devouring secret skill, Black Dragon Devour. The Heaven Devouring secret skill had a total of 5 levels. After mastering each level, one would be able to comprehend a powerful devouring skill. The Black Dragon Devour was the devouring skill after mastering the first level. Yi Guchen's original body had also comprehended it long ago, but he had not used it yet. At this moment, he was using Duguchuma's hand to display it. The black dragon head opened its mouth and directly swallowed the flames spat out by the fire wolf lion. Then, with a loud bang, the red torrent spurted out again and rushed toward the fire wolf lion. At the same time, Duguchuma's body flashed and landed in front of Zonglai again. Without the protection of his demonic beast, the demonic beast sect's genius could not withstand a single blow. No, don't. Zonglai's face was filled with extreme fear. Before he could finish his words, Duguchuma's palm slammed down and directly smashed Zonglai's entire head. Splat. Brain matter splattered and red and white matter scattered. In the rain of blood, Duguchuma's bleak white hair fluttered and his dark golden demonic eyes emitted a bloodthirsty cold light. For a moment, it was as if the world had frozen and the atmosphere had dropped to the freezing point. The white-haired killing god was showing off his ability. Chapter 11:28. Dead silence. It was as if winter had arrived in the world. Everyone felt a chill that came from their bones. Whether it was the heavenly demon sect disciples or the disciples of the 3 sects, their faces were frozen with shock. How many breaths had it been? Yang Bui and Zonglai were dead. And they died in the hands of a youth at the 5th level of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth. Who would dare to believe it? The 2 of them, one was ranked 12th and the other 13th on the blood ranking. They were not weak characters. But now, in the hands of Duguchuma, they were not much stronger than ants. Am I dreaming? Is this real? No, how is it possible? Senior brother Zonglai is so strong. How could he die so quickly? The disciples of the demonic beast sect and the 6th desire demon sect could not believe that the scene in front of them was real. The 2 leaders of the 2 sects were also frozen on the spot. The mocking smile from before still remained on their faces. But now they could not laugh at all. The heavenly demon sect was also shocked, but it was slightly easier for them to accept compared to the 3 sections. Because they already knew that Duguchuma was the white-haired sword demon who had caused the calamity. It was just that they did not expect that Duguchuma would be so powerful. This was because Duguchuma's cultivation at the 5th level of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth had confused their judgment, making them subconsciously think that Duguchuma's strength was just SOSO. Elder Kuyuan's eyes were a little dazed, as if he had not recovered from the shock. Yen Kuan was speechless. His mouth was wide open, and his thoughts were in a mess. Li Rui's face was extremely pale. She originally thought that the reason why Dugu Qiuma had such a reputation was because of that evil demon eye. Now it seemed that Dugu Qiuma's strength was far beyond Li Rui's imagination. In the entire heavenly demon sect, only Qing Qing was slightly calm. She was the first person to come in contact with Dugu Qiuma, and instinctively sensed that Dugu Qiuma was extremely dangerous. That was why Qing Qing had tried her best to persuade Dugu to join the heavenly demon sect. She had even given him 10 bottles of Azura's blood. Young Master Dugu, you've hidden yourself too well. Qing Qing shook her head and smiled bitterly. She already thought highly of Dugu Qiuma, but at this moment, the battle strength that Dugu Qiuma displayed was still far beyond her expectations. For you. On the stage, Yuan Huang's face was no longer as calm as before. He looked at Dugu like he was looking at an Azura from hell. He couldn't be blamed for being so cautious, because there were 2 corpses lying on the stage. At this time, if Yuan Huang still underestimated the enemy like before, then he would really be a fool. Dugu begs for help. Dugu Qiuemo raised his hand, and black light flickered. Then, a pitch-black crystal sword appeared. The entire sword had a ferocious appearance. Its entire body was covered with black crystals, as if it was made of black crystals. It was the God Devourer's sword covered in crystals. After all, Yuan Huang was a second-layer divine dwelling heaven pride, and his strength was much stronger than Yang Buwei, Zhong Lai and the others. Dugu Qiuemo naturally wouldn't make the mistake of underestimating the enemy, so he summoned the God Devourer sword. However, although Dugu Qiuemo could freely use the God Devourer sword, it didn't mean that he could fully display the sword's power. After all, he was only at the 5th level of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. The power of the God Devourer sword was obviously different from when I Ching used the God Devourer sword. It was like asking a child to swing a giant hammer. Whether or not it was powerful, whether or not it could be swung was another matter. But even so, the God Devourer sword could still display a certain amount of power in Dugu Qiuemo's hands. At least, the God Devourer sword wouldn't lose in a head-on clash with a true heavenly tribulation divine weapon. This is a black crystal sword, a head of white hair, and that evil demonic eye. Could you be? Seeing Dugu Qiuemo summon the God Devourer sword, Yuan Huang suddenly thought of something and couldn't help but ask. Hearing his words, the disciples of the 3 sects immediately reacted. It can't be, could it really be that ruthless person? A head of white hair, a demonic eye, and a black crystal sword. That's right, it really is the ruthless person who slaughtered 13 cities, the white-haired sword demon. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. After learning Dugu Qiuemo's true identity, the disciples of the 3 sects were in an uproar. Fan Yuan looked coldly at Ku Yuan and said through gritted teeth, "Old geezer Ku Yuan, are you trying to set us up?" In Fan Yuan's eyes, Ku Yuan deliberately didn't reveal Dugu Qiuemo's identity and made them fight to the death. It was obvious that he wanted to frame the heaven prides of the 3 sections. I'm not. Ku Yuan's voice faltered, and he found it difficult to explain. It wasn't that he didn't say it before, but that he didn't think Dugu Qiuemo could defeat Yuan Huang and the others. Ku Yuan, you've got guts. The 2 sovereigns of the 6 Desire Demon sect and the Demonic Beast sect stared at Ku Yuan as if they wanted to skin him alive. The Heavenly Demon sect had the white-haired sword demon, but they still set up such a trap and killed the heaven prides of the 2 sections. At this moment, Ku Yuan's heart was filled with a mixture of joy and worry. He was happy that the other sects had finally suffered a loss during this visit to the mountain. He was worried because he seemed to have offended Dugu Qiuemo before. On the arena, Yuan Huang's face froze. He naturally knew about the rumors of the white-haired sword demon. But he didn't expect to really encounter him. Why, the white-haired sword demon is only at the 5th level of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth, but his strength is so terrifying that he can even kill divine dwelling heaven prides. Yuan Huang thought to himself. But on second thought, a look of determination flashed in his eyes. No, my strength is far from what Yang Buwei and Zhong Lai can compare to. They underestimated the enemy before, which allowed Duguqiu Mo to seize the opportunity. As long as I go all out, I won't lose. Yuan Huang thought that Duguqiu Mo had killed Yang Bui and Zonglai because they underestimated the enemy. Otherwise, the two of them wouldn't have died so easily. Next, it's your turn. I said that I only have one kind of enemy, and that's the dead. Duguqiu Mo's eyes were indifferent, without the slightest emotion. He wielded the God Devourer sword and slashed at Yuan Huang. Yuan Huang didn't dare to hide his strength at this moment. He summoned his quasi-heavenly tribulation divine weapon, which was an axe. Ah! Duguqiu Mo's eyes flashed coldly as he slashed out with the sword in his hand. 13 demon swords, blood kill. Duguqiu Mo slashed out with his sword, and the God Devourer sword was filled with blood-red sword light. The 13 demon swords was the signature move of the demon sword emperor, Jin. When Jitian controlled the God Devourer sword, he had integrated the cultivation method of the 13 demon swords into the God Devourer sword so that it would be easier for him to use it in the future. Now, Duguqiu Mo had comprehended and controlled it. Of course, given Duguqiu Mo's current cultivation level, he could only use the first few moves. But its power was already incomparably astonishing. After all, it was the signature move of the Demon Sword Emperor. How could it be weak? The sword collided with Yuan Huang's axe. In an instant, a gap was formed on the axe, and cracks spread across the body of the axe. How is this possible? Yuan Huang's eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. It was a quasi-heavenly tribulation divine weapon, not a weapon that could be found on the streets. It shattered with a touch. Chapter 1129. Monstrous waves were set off in Yuan Huang's heart. His axe was a quasi-heavenly tribulation divine weapon that had always accompanied him in battle and cultivation. There had never been a problem with it. But now, when the axe collided with Duguqiu Mo's God Devourer sword, it was immediately covered with cracks. How could Yuan Huang know that Duguqiu Mo's weapon was the immemorial demon sword? Across the vast world, there were only 108 super divine weapons. Even with Duguqiu Mo's current cultivation level, he could not exert 1/10,000th of the God Devourer sword's power. But just by relying on the material of the God Devourer sword itself, let alone a quasi-heavenly tribulation divine weapon, even a real heavenly tribulation divine weapon would have a crack when clashing with it. Duguqiu Mo, on the other hand, frowned slightly as if he was not satisfied with his results. His sword momentum changed again as he displayed the second sword of the 13 demon swords, Vanishing Shadow. Swoosh! Duguqiu Mo drew his sword. The speed of the sword was extremely fast, as if cutting through the void, thrusting straight at Yuan Huang's chest. Ghost King Slash. Seeing this, Yuan Huang didn't dare to be careless in the slightest. The aura of the second layer of the divine dwelling gushed out. Vigorous essential qi gushed out from his divine dwelling and poured into the hatchet that was covered with cracks. A black crescent-shaped hatchet light slashed out, plowing a deep mark on the arena. However, boom! A violent collision burst out. The light of the God Devourer's sword broke through the hatchet light without any suspense and shot towards Yuan Huang. How could this be? Yuan Huang's face turned slightly pale. This move of his, if it was the previous Yan Kuan who received it, Yan Kuan would probably have been split into two halves. But now, Duguqiu Mo had broken through it. Yuan Huang hurriedly placed the hatchet in front of him again. The God Devourer's sword directly touched the surface of the hatchet. Kacha! Accompanied by a series of metal cracking sounds, the quasi-heavenly tribulation divine weapon-level hatchet shattered into fragments that filled the sky. Yuan Huang's figure was drawn back again, coughing up blood. His eyes were filled with horror as he stared at Duguqiu Mo as if he was staring at the god of death that had climbed out of hell. No! Impossible! Yuan Huang's heart was filled with a trace of fear. One must know that as a heaven pride of the mystic demon palace. Apart from his brother Yuan Hua, Yuan Huang was not convinced by anyone. Even in front of Princess Luoho, Yuan Huang would not show the slightest bit of fear. But now, facing the white-haired Duguqiu Mo who looked like a demon in the sword, he felt as if he was facing a sword demon. Yuan Huang felt a trace of fear. He really couldn't understand how Dugu Qiuma could be so strong. Naturally, it was because the Demon 13 swords that Dugu Qiuma used was the Demon Sword Emperor's ultimate skill. As a super expert who had once brought calamity to the South Horizon region, how could the Demon Sword Emperor Jitian's swordsmanship be weak? Moreover, the most important was the God devouring sword. As a primordial demon sword, a quasi-heavenly tribulation divine weapon, it was already very good that it could withstand 2 collisions. No, I don't believe it. What white-haired sword demon? I won't listen to any rumors. Yuan Huang clenched his teeth, his aura rising to the extreme. He made another move. He stretched out a hand, and his entire arm became as black as ink. Then, he struck out with his hand and the pitch-black demonic hand pressed down on Dugu Qiuma again. It was one of the strongest emperor-level martial arts of the mystic demon palace, the Black Sky Demon Hand. In the face of Yuan Huang's strongest move, Dugu Qiuma's eyes narrowed slightly. If he was also of the divine dwelling stage, he could easily resolve this move. But now, even if Dugu Qiuma used the heaven-devouring secret art, he was only at the 8th level of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. There was a huge gap between him and the 2nd level of the divine dwelling stage. But if Dugu Qiuma, a peerless monster with 5 levels of talent, couldn't even take this move from Yuan Huang, then he would be ashamed of Yi Guchen's efforts to refine him. Battle God Demon Body. Dugu Qiuma first activated the Battle God Demon Body. Black demonic runes emerged from under his skin, and terrifying power burst out from Dugu Qiuma's body. At the same time, Dugu Qiuma's Sea of Knowledge spun. His Sea of Knowledge had not only merged with 1/3 of Yi Guchen's Sea of Knowledge. It had also merged with the Spirit Source Crystal of the Spirit-Devouring Royal Clan and 3 Saint Crystals. In terms of power, not only was it not the slightest bit weaker than Yi Guchen's chaotic Sea of Knowledge, it even faintly surpassed it. Dugu Qiuma activated the spirit power in his Sea of Knowledge. That spiritual energy was actually a faint black color. Terrifying true qi, accompanied by the spirit power, rose from the surface of Dugu Qiuma's body, and turned into a black hole-like existence above his head. It was the soul-devouring secret art that Han Mie Yen of the Spirit-Devouring clan had once used. Of course, Dugu Qiuma's spirit-devouring secret art was naturally incomparable to Han Mie Yen. But to the prodigies of the same generation, it was already an extremely terrifying attack. As for the more powerful 7 limits of devouring heaven and destroying earth, even Dugu Qiuma would not be able to use it in a short time. Rumble. Yuan Huang's Black Sky demonic hand blasted into the black hole, and destructive shockwaves spread out crazily. Dugu Qiuma's body kept shaking as if he was under pressure. But with the strength of his battle god demon body, he finally withstood it. He withstood it. Dugu Qiuma withstood Yuan Huang's Black Sky demonic hand. The surrounding disciples of the Sky Demon sect and the other 3 sects were all dumbfounded, and their mouths were so wide open that an egg could be stuffed in. That was the Black Sky demonic hand, and Yuan Huang had used this move to send Yen Kun of the Sky Demon sect flying. But now, Dugu Qiuma did not suffer any obvious injuries, and was able to neutralize it. This is impossible. Yuan Huang's eyes were scarlet, and he could not believe his eyes. This was the move he had practiced for the longest time, and also the move he was most confident in. But it had been neutralized so easily by someone else. And it was an opponent of the 5th stage spirit bridge of heaven and earth. Yuan Huang was unwilling to believe it. Dugu Qiuma's eyes were cold and indifferent. He did not hesitate at all, and the god-devouring sword cut through the void with a buzzing sound, as if it was thirsting for something. The sword in my hand is thirsting for blood. Dugu Qiuma's lips curled into a cold and evil smile. No. Yuan Huang was really panicking this time, and his whole body was stiff and numb. Stop! Fan Yuan, who was watching the battle, saw the situation and roared. But he was still some distance away from the stage, and Dugu Qiuma's sword was too fast. A pitch-black sword shadow directly pierced through Yuan Huang's chest. Scarlet blood splattered everywhere. Yuan Huang's eyes widened as he looked at the black crystal sword that had pierced through his chest. He felt that all of his blood essence and true qi had been absorbed by the sword. Remember, I, Duguchuma, will leave only a lonely soul and bones under my sword. Duguchuma's tone was cold and evil as he muttered. I think this. Yuan Huang struggled to say, and the light in his eyes faded, leaving only endless regret. If he had not come to visit the mountain, if he had not met Duguchuma, perhaps he would have been able to amaze the world on the Azura Blood Road. But now he was dead, and there was nothing left. The moment Duguchuma killed Yuan Huang, a terrifying true qi fluctuation, accompanied by a fierce and cold voice, erupted. Little bastard, you are courting death. Chapter 1130. Fan Yuan's aura surged as the aura of a celestial palace supremacy erupted without reservation. His gaze was like a snake that was choosing its prey as he stared at Duguchuma. Yuan Huang was dead. This was definitely a big blow to Mystic Demon Palace. Although Yuan Huang's talent and strength were not as good as his brother Yuan Hua, he was still a rare genius disciple. It was conceivable that Fan Yuan would be severely punished when he returned to Mystic Demon Palace. Because he was the one who led the visit this time. I told you to stop, but you still dared to kill. Fan Yuan's eyes were scarlet as he panted, his chest heaving up and down. I've said it before, my enemies only have one outcome, and that is death. Facing the furious supremacy of Mystic Demon Palace, Duguchuma's expression was still indifferent without the slightest change. Good lad. Fan Yuan laughed angrily as he reached out to suppress Duguchuma. At this moment, Elder Ku Yuan also made his move and blocked Fan Yuan's move. Old man Ku Yuan, how dare you stop me? Fan Yuan shouted. Mystic Demon Palace had never suffered such a big loss. Therefore, Fan Yuan was determined to get back at him. Not only him, but the two supremacies of Demonic Beast Sect and Six Desire Demon Sect were also furious as they stared at Duguchuma unkindly. This time, the three major sects came to visit the mountain and suffered heavy losses. 3 top prodigies on the blood ranking died just like that. If it were other sects, they would also not be able to accept it. Therefore, today they could not just swallow their anger and leave like that. Fan Yuan, the 3 major sects agreed to the life and death duel. Are you going to go back on your word now? Ku Yuan said solemnly. With the 3 major sects exerting pressure, Heavenly Demon Sect would definitely not have it easy. Old man Ku Yuan, you still dare to say that? If you had said earlier that he was the white-haired sword demon who slaughtered 13 cities, would we have agreed to the life and death duel so easily? Thinking of this, Fan Yuan was even angrier. In his eyes, Heavenly Demon Sect was definitely setting up a trap to lure them into a trap. I don't know either. Ku Yuan's expression was a little ugly. If he had known that Duguchuma had such strength, would he have offended Duguchuma? In any case, the geniuses of our 3 sects have all fallen here. If your Heavenly Demon Sect doesn't give us an explanation, we won't let this go. The Venerable of the Demonic Beast Sect said coldly. For a time, all the Heavenly Devil Sect elders, including Ku Yuan, looked troubled. Just as the situation was in a deadlock, a cold voice suddenly sounded. What explanation do you want? Hearing this voice, Ku Yuan and the other elders revealed a trace of joy. The faces of Fan Yuan and the other martial highnesses of the 3 sects sank. A black-robed old man who was as thin as a skeleton suddenly appeared in the void. The demonic aura around him was so dense that it seemed to distort the void. He did not deliberately release his aura, but even the venerables felt a suffocating pressure. There was no doubt that the black-robed old man was a false saint expert. Supreme Elder. The many elders and disciples of the Heavenly Demon Sect respectfully greeted the old man when they saw him. This old man was the Supreme Elder of the Heavenly Demon Sect. Pei Tuesday, seeing the appearance of the Heavenly Demon Sect's false saint expert, the arrogance of Fan Yuan and the others was greatly suppressed. Although they had the Mystic Demon Palace and other forces behind them, they were still the weaker side in the face of a false saint expert. You want an explanation from my Heavenly Demon Sect? Pei Tu's tone was very cold. The pressure he released made Fan Yuan and the others break out in cold sweat. Then, Ku Yuan stepped forward and briefly explained the matter. Pei Tu looked at Duguqiuma with a trace of surprise in his eyes. As the Supreme Elder, he was in seclusion all year round and did not know about the legend of the white-haired sword demon. Just now, he had sensed the commotion at the mountain gate and thought that something had happened, so he came out of seclusion. I see. You were the one who agreed to the life and death battle. What explanation do you want? Since they were in the right, Pei Tu's position was naturally more unyielding. But Ku Yuan never said that the white-haired sword demon was recruited by your heavenly demon sect. Isn't it obvious that you want to trick us? Fan Yuan was a little angry. At this time, Duguqiuma said indifferently, I think you all have misunderstood. Fan Yuan and the others frowned. I have never been a member of the heavenly demon sect. I was even rejected by the heavenly demon sect, Duguqiuma said indifferently. As soon as he said that, Elder Ku Yuan's face turned extremely ugly. Yen Kuan and Li Rui's faces were also alternating between green and white. It was very unnatural. What's going on? Fan Yuan and the others from the three sects were also stunned. A prodigy with abnormal strength like Duguqiuma was rejected by the heavenly demon sect? After all, he was a ruthless person who had killed Yuan Huang, Zhong Lai, and Yang Bui, three prodigies on the blood ranking. Even the Supreme Elder Pei Tu's face changed slightly. He had just come out of seclusion and was not clear about the previous situation. He also mistakenly thought that Duguqiuma was already a member of the heavenly demon sect. My condition for helping the heavenly demon sect was 100 bottles of Azura's blood, but Elder Ku Yuan rejected it directly. Not only that, he even wanted to take away the 10 bottles of Azura's blood that originally belonged to me. Duguqiuma said in an indifferent tone. As soon as these words came out, Elder Ku Yuan's face almost collapsed. Fan Yuan and the others were also stunned. They looked at Ku Yuan as if they were looking at an idiot. Is this true? 100 bottles of Azura blood is too good a deal. Only an idiot wouldn't try to recruit them. Although Duguqiuma killed Yuan Huang, which made Fan Yuan very unhappy. He also had to admit that Duguqiuma's strength was indeed one of the best among the younger generation of the Molo dynasty. Is this true? Pei Tu's face was completely gloomy. Such a prodigy with monstrous strength was rejected by Ku Yuan. This was simply a huge loss. No. Ku Yuan's mouth was filled with bitterness. If he had known that Duguqiuma had such monstrous strength, Ku Yuan would have agreed to 200 bottles of Azura's blood, let alone 100 bottles. At this moment, Fan Yuan's expression suddenly changed and he said, Duguqiuma, although you killed Yuan Huang, it's not that you can't redeem yourself. As long as you join the Mystic Demon Palace, with your talent, there will definitely be great figures who will take a fancy to you. In addition, I can promise to give you 200 bottles of Azura's blood. Fan Yuan's words stunned everyone in the heavenly demon sect. Just a moment ago, they were shouting to kill Duguqiuma. In the blink of an eye, they were going to recruit him? In fact, Fan Yuan was thinking that Yuan Huang's death was irreversible. If he could recruit the stronger Duguqiuma into the Mystic Demon Palace, he might be able to make up for it. The Demonic Beast sect offers 300 bottles of Azura's blood. The Demonic Beast sect's venerable also reacted and immediately shouted to Duguqiuma. The Six Desire Demon sect offers 400 bottles. The Six Desire Demon sect's venerable also hurriedly shouted. How could this be? Seeing this scene, Elder Ku Yuan was a little stunned and his entire person fell into a daze. Previously, when Duguqiuma only asked for 100 bottles of Azura's blood, Ku Yuan felt that it was not worth it and directly rejected it. He even wanted to take back the 10 bottles of Azura's blood that Duguqiuma deserved. In the end, the other sects were now offering 300 to 400 bottles of Azura's blood, competing to recruit Duguqiuma. Ku Yuan felt dizzy and almost fainted. Chapter 1131. Elder Ku Yuan, you've really made a mistake. Qing Qing also sighed slightly. If she had not stopped Ku Yuan from taking back the 10 bottles of Azura blood, The relationship between the heavenly demon sect and Duguqioma would have been even worse. Ku Yuan, this is what you've done. The veins on Pei Tu's forehead were throbbing. Now that the Azura Blood Road was about to open, the heavenly demon sect was lacking geniuses. At such a critical juncture, having a monstrous genius like Duguqioma join them was no different from sending charcoal in snowy weather to the heavenly demon sect. With Duguqioma's combat strength, he might not be in the top few in the Azura Blood Road, but he would at least be in the top 10. In that case, the heavenly demon sect's crisis would be completely resolved. Between 100 bottles of Azura blood and the qualification to participate in the Azura Blood Road, anyone who was not a fool would know which was more important. However, such a savior was directly rejected by Ku Yuan. It was no wonder Pei Tu was so furious. Ku Yuan's mouth was full of bitterness. He looked at Duguqioma with a struggling expression. However, when he looked at Duguqioma's gloomy face, he gritted his teeth and cupped his hands at Duguqioma. I'm sorry, young friend Dugu. I was wrong before, please forgive me. Seeing this scene, the surrounding heavenly demon sect disciples were all stunned. Since when had they ever seen a martial highness elder apologizing to a junior? Duguqioma's expression was still indifferent. Ku Yuan's expression changed 1,000 times, and he was extremely embarrassed. As for Yan Kuan and Li Rui, they were trembling with fear at this moment. Recalling how they mocked Duguqioma before, they felt a chill in their hearts. A complicated expression appeared on Qing Qing's delicate face. Although she really wanted Duguqioma to join the heavenly demon sect, the heavenly demon sect had indeed offended Duguqioma. Seeing this, Pei Tu said, young friend Dugu, as long as you're willing to join the heavenly demon sect, any condition is negotiable. Pei Tu was unwilling to give up Duguqioma. If Dugu were to join a sect like the Mystic Demon Palace, the heavenly demon sect would have no chance at all. They would only be at the bottom. Young Master Dugu. Qing Qing bit her red lips lightly and hesitated to speak, and she went silent in the end. She knew that Dugu didn't actually care about her when he was begging the devil. The only reason he saved her was because of the 10 bottles of Azura blood. Duguqiomo's eyes were deep as he looked at Qing Qing, who had an expectant expression. Qing Qing was right. Duguqiomo did not care about her. However, Dugu did not intend to join other sections. Because there was no need to. It was the same for Duguqiomo no matter which sect he joined. He only needed the Azura blood and the Azura Blood Road. It's not impossible for me to join the Heavenly Devil sect, but I have 2 requests, Duguqioma said calmly. Qing Qing was pleasantly surprised when she heard that. Pei Tu also breathed a sigh of relief. As long as Duguqioma had such intentions, the Heavenly Demon sect would naturally try their best to satisfy him. Fan Yuan and the other venerables' faces darkened when they heard that. First, I want 1,000 bottles of Azura blood, Duguqioma said calmly. What? The Heavenly Demon sect disciples were all shocked. 1,000 bottles of Azura blood. Even for the 6 major sects, 1,000 bottles of Azura blood was definitely not a small number. Ku Yuan sucked in a breath of cold air. From 100 bottles to 1,000 bottles, that was a 10-fold increase. Only Duguqioma could say that out loud. This was definitely an exorbitant demand. Fan Yuan and the others' faces also changed. They could act on their own and spend 300 to 400 bottles of Azura blood to recruit Duguqioma. However, it was impossible for them to take out 1,000 bottles at once. After all, the Azura blood was a precious cultivation resource that was calculated in drops. Pei Tu also let out a deep breath, and a trace of pain flashed across his face. He glared fiercely at Ku Yuan, and after thinking for a moment, he said, okay. 1,000 bottles of Azura blood was a huge loss for the Heavenly Demon sect. However, compared to the gains they could get from the Azura Blood Road, these losses were nothing. All right then, the second condition is that I want them dead. Duguqioma looked at Yan Kuan and Li Rui with a cold gaze. Duguqioma had never been a magnanimous person. Whoever dared to provoke him, he would take revenge 1,000 times over. Yan Kuan and Li Rui's faces suddenly changed when they heard that, and they became as pale as paper. They did not expect Duguqioma to target them at this moment. Yen Kuan was slightly flustered, but when he thought of his identity as the heavenly demon sect's holy son, his flustered emotions calmed down. He regained his composure and looked at Duguqiuma. I did not expect you to have such strength, but if you want to kill me, you are too naive. I am the heavenly demon sect's holy son. How can you kill me with just a word? Li Rui also reacted and regained her composure. She looked at Duguqiuma with a smug look. That's right, senior brother Yen Kuan is the heavenly demon sect's holy son. You want to kill senior brother Yen Kuan with just a word? Dream on. Yen Kuan and Li Rui did not believe that Pei Tu would kill them for Dugu, who had not yet joined the heavenly demon sect. Not only him, but even Ku Yuan and the other heavenly demon sect elders and disciples did not believe that Pei Tu would kill the heavenly demon sect's holy son because of Duguqiuma. However, the truth was that Pei Tu did not hesitate for too long and said, "Okay." As soon as he said that, the entire heavenly demon sect fell into a dead silence. The smug smiles on Yen Kuan and Li Rui's faces froze. It was replaced by disbelief. As soon as Pei Tu finished speaking, he attacked Yen Kuan and Li Rui with one hand. Yen Kuan screamed in horror and despair. Li Rui's face was also pale, and endless regret spread in her heart. If she could do it all over again, she would never have provoked Duguqiuma. With one palm, Yen Kuan and Li Rui were smashed into meat patties. Yen Kuan and Li Rui have violated the sect rules and are to be executed immediately. Pei Tu's expression was indifferent. Yen Kuan was defeated by Yuan Huang in one move. Duguqiuma, on the other hand, killed Yuan Huang and 3 other heavenly prides. Was there a need to hesitate and compare between the two? Because of this, Pei Tu did not hesitate to kill Yen Kuan and Li Rui. Ku Yuan and the others were dumbfounded when they saw this scene. They did not expect Pei Tu to go to such lengths for Duguqiuma. He was the heavenly demon sect's holy son. Fan Yuan and the others also gasped. They did not dare to be too presumptuous for fear that Pei Tu would attack them too. Duguqiuma's eyes were still indifferent when he saw this. This was the law of survival in the Moro dynasty. Because Yen Kuan's value was not as high as Duguqiuma's, Pei Tu directly abandoned Yen Kuan. Such a cold-blooded thing would almost never happen in places like the Sword Dynasty. However, Duguqiuma did not care. After all, the heavenly demon sect was just a tool for him to use. It was impossible for him to have a sense of belonging. Chapter 1132. As for Ku Yuan, Duguqiuma knew that Pei Tu wouldn't kill him. After all, a supremacy was still very important to the heavenly demon sect. Dugu is indeed wise. As for Ku Yuan, you're stripped of your position as an elder for 3 years and sent to the flame cave to meditate for a year, Pei Tu said coldly. Yes, thank you for your tolerance, Supreme Elder. Ku Yuan cupped his hands. This punishment was neither heavy nor light. It was also Pei Tu's explanation to Duguqiuma. Since Pei Tu had already done so, Duguqiuma naturally wouldn't make things difficult for him. He cupped his hands and said, Elder is indeed straightforward. In that case, Duguqiuma is willing to help the heavenly demon sect. That's good. With Dugu joining us, our heavenly demon sect shouldn't be at the bottom of the Azura Blood Road. Pei Tu was also relieved. He didn't ask Duguqiuma to help the heavenly demon sect fight for first place. As long as they weren't at the bottom. Seeing that Duguqiuma had completely joined the heavenly demon sect, Fan Yuan and the others didn't look good. This time, their 3 sects each lost a prodigy and didn't manage to recruit Duguqiuma. It was a huge loss. Fan Yuan couldn't help but say coldly, All right, since you've joined the heavenly demon sect, there's nothing more to say. Since you'll also participate in the Azura Blood Road, I'll warn you in advance. Don't encounter Yuan Hua. Yuan Hua was Yuan Huang's elder brother and the strongest prodigy of the Mystic Demon Palace, ranked 3rd on the blood ranking. Hearing the name Yuan Hua, many disciples of the heavenly demon sect shrunk their heads. Obviously, they were afraid of this name. Qing Qing's beautiful eyes also revealed a hint of seriousness. Now that Duguqiuma had displayed his combat strength, it was indeed shocking. However, Yuan Huang's strength was far from what Yuan Hua could compare to. Yes, and my demonic beast sect's Shan Yu won't let you go either. The demonic beast sect's supremacy said coldly. Shan Yu of the demonic beast sect was ranked 9th on the blood ranking. His strength was much higher than Zhong Lai and Chao Hu. My 6th desire demon sect's Miao Yu is very willing to use you as a cultivation vessel, the 6th desire demon sect's supremacy said in a threatening tone. Miao Yu of the 6th desire demon sect was ranked 8th on the blood ranking. She was a famous femme fatale who loved to use handsome young men as cultivation furnaces and squeeze their essence dry. The heavenly demon sect's disciples' faces turned pale when they heard those vicious names. If he were to face these people, even the white-haired sword demon wouldn't be able to gain any advantage, right? In contrast to the people from Sky Devil sect, Dugu Chiumo's expression was very calm and indifferent. What he had just displayed was not all of his strength. Do you want to stay as guests of my heavenly devil sect forever by talking so much nonsense? Pei Tu said coldly. When Fan Yuan and the others heard this, their hearts went cold, and they turned around and left. Their backs seemed to be in a rather sorry state. Obviously, Pei Tu's meaning was that if they continued to blabber, he would directly kill them. The disciples of the heavenly demon sect heaved a sigh of relief when they saw the 3 sects leaving in a sorry state. However, many people were looking at Dugu with eyes that were filled with admiration and pity. They were amazed by Dugu Chiumo's strength. Unfortunately, Dugu Chiumo would be targeted like never before on the Azura Blood Road. When the time came, it was still unknown whether he could survive. Pei Tu spoke again. I now announce that Dugu Chiumo is the holy son of the heavenly demon sect. Elders and disciples, do you have any objections? Everyone from the heavenly demon sect looked at each other. He became the holy son as soon as he joined the heavenly demon sect. Dugu Chiumo could be considered to have broken the record. However, no one raised any objections. After all, everyone had witnessed Dugu Chiumo's strength. In the younger generation of the heavenly demon sect, there was indeed no one more suitable than Dugu Chiumo. Dugu Chiumo frowned slightly. He only agreed to help the heavenly demon sect participate in the Azura Blood Road, but he didn't want to join the heavenly demon sect completely. I hope you won't refuse, Pei Tu said again. Dugu Chiumo could only nod when he heard that. Anyway, the title of Holy Son was just a title. After that, everything went smoothly. Dugu Chiumo became the new holy son of the heavenly demon sect. Pei Tu also quickly handed over 1,000 bottles of Azura blood to Dugu Chiumo. Although 1,000 bottles of Azura blood was a lot, the heavenly demon sect was still one of the 6 great sects after all. They could still take it out if they wanted. I can finally start cultivating. Dugu Chiumo's eyes flashed. With enough Azura blood, Dugu Chiumo's cultivation speed would soar again. Dugu Chiumo's goal was to reach the divine dwelling stage when he participated in the prodigy battlefield. If my divine dwelling can transform, then there's no need to worry about the prodigy battlefield. If not, there's still me, Dugu Chiumo thought to himself. He entered a quiet cave abode in the heavenly demon sect and began to cultivate. Late at night, in the cave abode, Dugu Chiumo's body suddenly shook, and an aura spread out again. 6th level Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. Dugu Chiumo revealed a satisfied look. The Azura blood not only contained rich essence chi, but also a refining power. In addition to the innate purple chi and devouring power refining, Dugu Chiumo had broken through a small realm in just one night. If this continued, Dugu Chiumo would most likely reach the divine dwelling stage when he participated in the Azura blood path. At this moment, a beautiful figure appeared outside the cave abode. Come in. Dugu Chiumo's spirit perception was very sharp, and he directly said. Qingqing, who was dressed in green, entered the cave abode. She had a jade face and red lips. Her face was delicate and beautiful. She sensed Dugu Chiumo's cultivation, and her face revealed a hint of surprise. 6th level Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge? Dugu Chiumo's cultivation speed surprised Qingqing. It's just normal speed. Dugu Chiumo did not say much. He also did not want to reveal his various methods. At this speed, young Master Dugu may be able to break through to the divine dwelling stage soon. But if young Master Dugu trusts me, I hope that young Master Dugu will not break through to the divine dwelling stage when you participate in the Azura blood path, Qingqing said. Oh, why? Dugu Chiu Mo revealed a hint of surprise. Logically speaking, the stronger he was, the better it was for the heavenly demon sect. Qingqing said, young master may not know, but rumor has it that the Azura blood path may contain the inheritance of a supreme expert, and even a method to directly cultivate a flawless divine dwelling. There is such a thing. Dugu Chiumo's eyes lit up. He really did not know that there was such a secret hidden in the Azura blood path. Young master only needs to cultivate to the 9th level heaven and earth spirit bridge, and then you may be able to find a method to cultivate a unique flawless divine dwelling in the Azura blood path, Qingqing said. Dugu Chiu-mo nodded slightly. Yi Guchen's original body cultivated the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra, so it was possible for it to transform into a supreme divine dwelling. But Dugu Chiu-mo did not cultivate the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra. If he directly broke through, he would only be able to cultivate a flawed divine dwelling. But if he could find a method to directly cultivate a flawless divine dwelling in the Azura blood path, it would undoubtedly be of great help to Dugu Chiumo's growth. The potential of a flawless divine dwelling was far from what a flawed divine dwelling could compare to. Moreover, Dugu Chiumo was also very interested in the inheritance of a supreme expert that might exist. Why are you telling me so much? You don't have to do this. Dugu Chiumo gave Qingqing a deep look. Qingqing's delicate face flushed red, and she bit her red lips as if she had made up her mind. She took off her green clothes, revealing her snow-white body, and like a slippery fish, she threw herself into Dugu Chiumo's arms. Young Master Dugu, Qingqing, likes you. Chapter 1133. Dugu Chiumo's expression was calm as he looked at the beautiful woman who was offering herself to him. Qingqing's body was graceful and gentle, and she even exuded a faint fragrance. Now that she was pouncing on him, it could be said that he was filled with her fragrance. Dugu Chiumo did not refuse nor accept. Instead, he let Qingqing lean on him and looked at her. Why? Young Master Dugu, you saved Qingqing? Qingqing's beautiful eyes were misty. I said, it's not for you, it's for the 10 bottles of Azura blood. Dugu Chiumo said. Also, young Master Dugu, you are very strong. Qingqing reached out and caressed the side of Dugu Chiumo's cold and handsome face. The Moro dynasty worshipped the strong, and the women of the Moro dynasty naturally worshipped the strong. Dugu Chiumo was undoubtedly such a strong person among the geniuses. Heroes loved beauties, and beauties loved heroes too. Not to mention a fierce and ambitious person like Dugu Chiumo. Qingqing felt that at least in the Moro dynasty, there were not many people who had the fierce and ambitious spirit of Dugu Chiumo. Unknowingly, Qingqing was deeply immersed in this demon-like temperament. I said, you're not worthy of me. Dugu Chiumo's tone was still indifferent. He was not like Yi Guchen, who did not get close to women. However, he was not a casual person. A white-haired sword demon like him, a peerless demon king, how could an ordinary woman be a match for him? Qingqing's body is very clean, and I've never touched any men. Moreover, Qingqing will not ask you to do anything for me. Qingqing's misty eyes were already surging with a trace of mist. She had already degraded herself to this extent. How could Dugu Chiumo remain indifferent? You, Dugu Chiumo pinched Qingqing's chin and looked at her fair and delicate face. After a night, when Qingqing opened her tired eyes again, she found Dugu Chiumo sitting beside her. His cultivation had reached the 7th stage of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. Not only that, when Qingqing returned to her senses, she discovered that she had unknowingly broken through to the 2nd layer of the divine dwelling realm. Young Master Dugu, Qingqing is? Qingqing was both surprised and delighted. Thinking about last night, could it be? Qingqing suddenly blushed. Dugu Chiumo's expression was indifferent. What Qingqing cultivated was a demonic cultivation technique. And Dugu's seeking devil was a pure devil body. The two of them made love to each other. It was like dual cultivation. Both of their strengths improved. Of course, the one who benefited the most was Qing. Thinking of this, Qing looked at Dugu, her eyes filled with a trace of infatuation. Dugu Qiumo's expression was indifferent. He glanced at Qing and said, "Let me give you a kind warning. Don't have any extra feelings for me." But Qing's blushing face paled slightly as she asked. Dugu Qiumo was silent. He closed his eyes and began to cultivate. In his heart, he murmured, "Because I, Dugu Qiumo, am the bane of my existence, the bane of his existence, destined to be lonely." The meaning of Dugu Qiumo's existence was just a clone of Yi Guqin. He was the other side of Yi Guqin. He lived for Yi Guqin. Seeing that Dugu Qiumo did not say anything more, Qing bit her lip and left. Dugu Qiumo still did not express anything. He and Yi Guqin had one point in common. They would not interfere with their cultivation for the sake of feelings. There's still some time before the Azura Blood Road opens. I need to cultivate to the peak of the 9th level Spirit Bridge as soon as possible, Dugu Qiumo muttered to himself, sinking into cultivation again. Sword Dynasty, Skyless Sword Realm. In this period of time, Yi Guqin also broke through the 7th sword formation and reached the 8th sword formation. The difficulty of the previous 1 yuan, 2 forms, 3 powers, 4 divisions, 5 elements, 6 directions, and 7 stars was multiplied. The difficulty of this 8th sword formation was definitely far from what the previous 7 stars sword formation could compare to. However, when he saw this 8th sword formation, Yi Guqin's eyes suddenly flashed with a hint of joy. Because this 8th sword formation shockingly corresponded to the 8 trigrams. And the 8 extremities reincarnation sword art that Yi Guqin cultivated just happened to correspond to the 8 trigrams. Looks like this 8 trigram sword formation not only cannot stump me, it might even help me comprehend the 8 extremities reincarnation sword art again, Yi Guqin muttered to himself. This could be considered an unexpected surprise. But even so, wanting to crack the 8 trigram sword formation was definitely not the work of a day. Following that, Yi Guqin spent a full half a month's time before he cracked the 8 trigram sword formation. At the same time, he also comprehended the extremities of wind, water, and swamp. Only the most powerful extremities of heaven and earth were left to be comprehended. But he was not far from comprehending. By then, if he completely comprehended all 8 forms, Yi Guqin would also be able to unleash the true power of the 8 extremities reincarnation sword art. The moment Yi Guqin cracked the 8 trigram sword formation, he felt that there was an obscure gaze that seemed to be watching him. Who exactly is it? Yi Guqin frowned slightly. But he did not pay too much attention to it. If that gaze was hostile to him, it would have been disadvantageous to him long ago. It would not have just been watching. Rumble. In the skyless sword realm, the 9th mountain rose from the bottom of the sea again. Yi Guqin's figure flashed into it and looked around. The 9th sword formation was different from the previous one. It was more complicated and difficult to crack. Does this sword formation contain the layout of the 9 palaces? Yi Guqin sized up the sword formation. At this time, he suddenly noticed that there was a sword mark left on a cliff behind the sword formation. That sword mark seemed to have condensed the power of heaven and earth, giving people a kind of magnificent momentum that could cut through the firmament and the universe. That is, Yi Guqin's eyes suddenly focused. What surprised him was not the sword mark itself. It was that he had a sense of familiarity with that sword mark, as if he had not seen it for a long time. Yi Guqin thought for a moment, and suddenly a light bulb flashed in his mind. Does that sword mark represent the unique skill of the 7th generation sword master, the sacred sword of heaven and earth? Yi Guqin's eyes flashed with shock. Yi Guqin's earliest contact with the sword sect was at the Sky Sword Peak of the Beichen Mansion in the Saint Origin dynasty. Yi Guqin obtained the 108,000 sword souls of the 8th generation sword master, Yi Tianxing, from the sword-seeking steel on the Sky Sword Peak. However, the first unique skill of the sword sect that Yi Guqin experienced was the sacred sword of heaven and earth. At that time, Yi Guqin wanted to obtain the sacred sword of heaven and earth, but it was the unique skill of the 7th-generation sword master. The Heaven Path Sword realm in the sword-seeking steel only had 108,000 sword souls. Now, in the Skyless Sword realm, Yiguchen finally saw the inheritance of the sacred sword of heaven and earth. Is this the so-called fate? Yiguchen could not help but sigh. Since the beginning of cultivation, the first time he experienced the sacred sword of heaven and earth. Now, he finally had the chance to master it. To Yiguchen, this was naturally an opportunity that he could not miss. If Yiguchen could obtain the sacred sword of heaven and earth, then he would have 3 unique skills of the sword sect. Even among the 9 generations of sword masters, there were not many people who could have 3 unique skills at the same time. However, to comprehend the unique skill of the sword sect on the cliff, Yiguchen still had to crack the 9-palace sword formation. At this moment, Yiguchen suddenly saw. On the cliff engraved with sword marks, a figure had appeared out of nowhere. That is, Yiguchen's eyes instantly focused. Chapter 1134. Standing on top of the cliff was a young lady with no makeup on her face. The young girl was about 15 or 16 years old. Her beautiful face was very simple and did not wear any makeup. She was wearing an extremely simple linen dress, and just stood there calmly on the cliff. She was like a pure and untainted peasant girl. Such a young girl, no matter where she was, would appear very ordinary and very common. She would not attract anyone's attention. But one had to know that this was the heavenless sword realm. If this pure young girl appeared anywhere, Yiguchen would definitely not be surprised. But in the heavenless sword realm, and in the 9th sword formation, then the existence of this young girl was extremely strange. Could she be the 7th-generation sword master? Yiguchen could not help but have a somewhat absurd thought in his heart. Because back then in the heavenly law sword realm, the consciousness clone of the 8th-generation sword master, Yi Tianxing, had also appeared. So Yiguchen subconsciously judged that this young girl might be the 7th-generation sword master. Of course, there was another, most important reason, and that was that Yiguchen felt an extremely dense sword concept from this beautiful young girl. That feeling was as if this pure young girl was the sword itself. With this kind of sword concept, coupled with her appearance in the heavenless sword realm, it really made people suspect that this pure young girl was the 7th-generation sword master. But what made Yiguchen puzzled was that when Yiguchen sensed the sacred sword of heaven and earth on the heavenly sword peak of the Beichen mansion, the figure that he faintly saw did not seem to be a woman. Therefore, Yiguchen was really somewhat unsure of the identity of the young girl on the cliff. After all, she was the 7th-generation sword master, or someone related to the 7th-generation sword master. Moreover, Yiguchen was also sure that the gaze that he felt before, which was secretly sizing him up, was undoubtedly this beautiful young girl. Just as Yiguchen was sizing up the beautiful young girl's gaze also landed on Yiguchen. In her clear eyes, there was both innocence and a trace of vicissitudes of life that had experienced time. It was like the combination of an old man who had experienced many years and an ignorant child. It was exceptionally strange. May I know your name and why you are in the Skyless Sword realm? Yiguchen cupped his hands and asked politely. At least for now, this girl, who was as pure as a peasant girl, did not show any hostility towards him. My name is Ah Sang. The girl named Ah Sang spoke, her voice like a mountain spring. She did not answer Yiguchen's second question. Then Ah Sang spoke again. If you can pass through this 9-palace sword formation, then you'll be qualified to comprehend the sacred sword of Qianquan. Yiguchen had a strange look in his eyes. Ah Sang also knew that the sword scar was the sacred sword of heaven and earth. This further confirmed that Ah Sang was related to the 7th sword master. However, if Ah Sang was the 7th-generation sword grandmaster, then why didn't she directly admit it? Thank you for your guidance, Miss Ah Sang, Yiguchen said. Since Ah Sang was unwilling to reveal her identity, then Yiguchen did not intend to pursue the matter. The most important thing right now was to break the formation, comprehend the sword sect's lost art, and find traces of the proud divine continent. At this time, Ah Sang spoke again. If you break this sword formation, then you'll find the person you're looking for in the 10th sword formation. Sang's words once again made Yiguchen raise his eyebrows. This meant that he could see the proud divine continent in the 10th sword formation? Actually, I hope that you can break through the skyless sword realm in the end. This way I can also be free. After all, it's too boring to stay here all the time. Sang lowered her head slightly and sighed. She seemed to have experienced the vicissitudes of life, but also sighed like a bored child. Then, Sang's figure directly faded into the void. Is she a consciousness doppelganger? Yiguchen wondered. Sang was clearly not a living person, but a consciousness clone that stayed in the skyless sword realm. Just like Yi Tianxing's clone in the heavenly Dao sword realm back then. If someone completely broke through the skyless sword realm, then the entire skyless sword realm would disappear, along with Sang's consciousness clone. This was the freedom she spoke of. However, the only thing that made Yiguchen puzzled was Sang's identity. What was it? Forget it, breaking the formation is still the priority right now. I need to quickly find the proud divine continent's alliance leader. I have a premonition that the 5 great families' revenge is not far away. Yiguchen muttered in his heart. He did not delay, directly stepping into the 9 palace sword formation and began to break the formation. As the 9th sword formation, the complexity and difficulty of the 9 palace sword formation was clearly far from what the previous sword formations could compare to. Yiguchen would have to spend even more time. In the blink of an eye, another half a month passed. Outside the skyless sword realm, the hearts of the vast majority of the Sword Dynasty's people completely sank, their faces carrying a grave expression. So much time had passed, but Yiguchen still did not show any signs of coming out. Then, it was very likely that Yiguchen had already fallen inside. Sigh, what a pity. Not long after ascending to the position of Jiankue, he fell. Dugawubai should be the shortest-lived Jiankue. Meng Charan covered her mouth with her jade-like hand and said sarcastically, Meng Charan, you dare to be presumptuous again. Mu Xingzu's pretty face turned cold. Charan, don't say any more. Facts speak louder than words. On the other hand, Luo Yu's expression was calm. He did not have any deep hatred towards Yiguchen, but in the end, Luo Yu felt somewhat uncomfortable that the position of Jiankue had been replaced by Yiguchen. The meaning of his words was that Yiguchen was very likely to fall, but it was not completely confirmed yet. These words caused the faces of many of the Sword Dynasty's people to turn slightly ugly. To be honest, most of them still hoped that Yiguchen could successfully bring the proud divine continent out. The proud divine continent was the stabilizing force of the Sword Dynasty. If he could escape, then the entire Sword Dynasty would immediately be as stable as Mount Tai. However, so many people entered the skyless sword realm to search for traces of the proud divine continent, but in the end, none of them came out. The reason why everyone had a glimmer of hope for Yiguchen was that he had previously created miracles in the other 3 secret realms. Therefore, many people thought that perhaps Yiguchen could also create a miracle in the skyless sword realm. However, now it seemed that they had taken it for granted. Haha, Deputy Alliance Leader Yi, I think the outcome is about to be announced. Meng Zhen stroked his beard. In his opinion, the outcome was already decided, and there was no need to wait. I believe he won't die so easily, Yi Tianqing said indifferently. You won't shed tears until you see the coffin? Meng Zhen snorted coldly in his heart. However, at this moment, a figure suddenly broke through the air in a hurry. Looking at his expression, he seemed to be somewhat anxious. A false saint expert. Feeling the fluctuation of the aura, everyone's eyes narrowed. Togu, what happened? Why are you so flustered? Yi Tianqing frowned slightly. Tuagu was one of the 8 remaining false saints in the Sword Dao Alliance. He was also in charge of various channels of information in the Sword Dynasty. Deputy Alliance Leader Yi, things are not good. The 5 great families are making a big move. Tuagu said anxiously. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.